Chapter 10-12. Back then, Chu Fengmian almost died in the hands of old ancestor Wu. He was the one who nurtured the young tree of God. Later on, Chu Fengmian took it away from him. This made old ancestor Wu hate Chu Fengmian to the extreme. Others might not know why Chu Fengmian's body was so strong, but he knew that it was all because of the tree of God in Chu Fengmian's body. He had already merged with the tree of God. When the builder tree was still around, countless innate divine beasts in the ancient Baron's continent fought against it, but they could not break it. In the end, it was the builder tree that broke the Baron's continent. The benefits of merging the tree of God into Chu Fengmian's body were immense. He had painstakingly nurtured the divine tree so that it could recognize him as its master and merge with his body after the nurturing was complete. He did not expect Chu Fengmian to take it away from him. His 1,000 years of nurturing had all gone to Chu Fengmian. How could he not be angry? How could he not hate Chu Fengmian? Jianwang, what's going on? As soon as Jianwang's spiritual master spoke, the other old ancestors of the ancient Baron's sect were shocked. They did not expect Jianwang's spiritual master to have a grudge against Chu Fengmian. He is the one who sneaked into the ancient Baron's sect's tree of God's secret realm and stole my tree of God and countless jade dew sacred fruits. Jianwang's spiritual master said angrily. What? He is the one who stole the tree of God and countless jade dew sacred fruits? The other old ancestors of the ancient Baron's sect shouted in shock when they heard Jianwang's spiritual master's words. They looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent. Back then, a martial artist had sneaked into the divine tree of God's secret realm and stole countless jade dew sacred fruits. He even stole the tree of God that Jianwang's spiritual master had nurtured. The ancient Baron's sect had been trying to find out who did it, but to no avail. Today, when Jianwang's spiritual master saw Chu Fengmian, he immediately recognized that the martial artist who had sneaked into the divine tree of God's secret realm was Chu Fengmian. Back when Chu Fengmian sneaked into the divine tree's secret realm and seized countless jade dew sacred fruits, the desolate ancient sect had paid a huge price. Dozens of desolate ancient sacred fruits were enough to create dozens of ancestors. Kid, hand over everything you took from the divine tree's secret realm. Jianwang's spiritual master looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a ferocious expression. Hand it over obediently, and we'll spare you some physical pain. Jianwang, you're not the only one who has a grudge against this brat. The Tianjian sect also has a grudge against him. Don't waste your breath on him. Let's suppress him first and interrogate him. He has too many secrets. Spiritual Master Jian Ke glanced at Spiritual Master Jianwang beside him, then his gaze fell on Chu Fengmian. Capture him. Suddenly, the 4 supreme ancestors of the Tianjian sect around Reverend Jian Ke took the initiative to attack. Boundless spiritual energy swept through everything as the 4 sword lights approached Chu Fengmian. The moment the sword lights of the supreme ancestors of the Tianjian sect slashed out, the space of the ancient fighting arena was torn apart. The 4 dazzling sword lights approached Chu Fengmian at the same time and slashed at his chest. At the same time, Chu Fengmian noticed that the supreme ancestors of the other sects did not attack. They were not watching from the sidelines. Instead, they were paying attention to the spiritual energy fluctuations around Chu Fengmian. It seemed that the 7 sects already knew that Chu Fengmian had the Cloud Feather Palace and could break the space to leave at any time. After all, Chu Fengmian was able to escape from the hands of ancestor Jianwang because of the Cloud Feather Palace. Therefore, the remaining supreme ancestors were quietly gathering their spiritual energy and began to seal the ancient fighting arena. Under such circumstances, Chu Fengmian was like a bird trapped in a cage. Unless he could break the seal of the ancient fighting arena, it would be extremely difficult for Chu Fengmian to escape. More than 20 supreme ancestors joined forces to seal the space. It seems that the 7 sects really think highly of me. Chu Fengmian's eyes were somewhat cold. There was no trace of fear, only an extremely terrifying battle intent. With your essence and blood, my strength will be further improved. Juk, attack! In an instant, the Juk godly sword in Chu Fengmian's right hand condensed a dazzling sword light. Layers of spiritual energy supported Chu Fengmian's body. It caused Chu Fengmian's aura to rise steadily. He stepped into the destiny realm. Juk Sword Light. This person can really use the full power of the Juk godly sword. Even though it was not the first time that they saw it, the supreme ancestors of the Tianjian sect were still extremely shocked. When Chu Fengmian used the Juk godly sword light to deal with the supreme ancestors of the 6 demonic sects, they could only watch from afar. The aura they felt was, of course, completely different from when they were face to face. The Juk godly sword had been in the Tianjian sect for 10,000 years, but no one could comprehend how to use the true power of the Juk godly sword. Therefore, it was only used as a heaven-level spiritual weapon. Now that Chu Fengmian had obtained the Juk godly sword, he could use the true power of the Juk godly sword within a day. All of this was unusual. This person's identity is very likely to be related to the Sword Dao sect. Everyone, don't hold back. Otherwise, sooner or later, it will be a big problem for the 7 sections. Spiritual Master Jianwang said coldly. When he mentioned the Sword Dao sect, there was a hint of fear in his voice. Only the people of the 7 great sects could understand the glory of the Sword Dao sect from the ancient books from 10,000 years ago and the oral narration of the experts of the generation. The Sword Dao sect. When the supreme ancestors of the other 7 sects heard these 4 words, they were also shocked. A look of astonishment flashed in their eyes. The name of the Sword Dao sect was taboo among the 7 sections. It represented a bloody battle 10,000 years ago. In that battle, the 7 sects had paid a great price. Jianwang, are you sure this person is related to the Sword Dao sect? One of the ancestral patriarchs from the Sage Monarch sect asked. In all likelihood, the Juk godly sword used to belong to the Sword Dao sect. The Tianjian sect has been unable to comprehend its mysteries for 10,000 years. Now that this person can use the Juk godly sword light, he must be related to the Sword Dao sect. Spiritual Master Jianwang said slowly. Chapter 10:13. Sword Dao sect. Sword Dao sect. When they heard these 3 words, all the great ancestors of the 7 major sects showed some seriousness in their eyes. On the phone, even the great ancestors of Tianshu Hall and Medicine King Valley didn't have such a big grudge against Chu Fengmian. After all, most of the disciples of the 7 major sects that Chu Fengmian killed were from the Tianjian sect and the Desolate Ancient sect. For example, Tianshu Hall and Medicine King Valley didn't intend to completely fall out with Chu Fengmian. But now, when they heard the 3 words Sword Dao sect, it was completely different. They also knew what the 3 words, Sword Dao sect, represented. If Chu Fengmian was really a descendant of the Sword Dao sect, then Chu Fengmian might be able to defeat the Demon Emperor, which made them even more afraid. Take him down and carefully examine him. A great ancestor of the ancient Moon Canyon shouted angrily. As the voice fell, the great ancestors of the ancient Moon Canyon all attacked together. The spiritual power in the sky turned into streaks of green silk, weaving and enveloping Chu Fengmian on the spot. The green silk was formed and its speed was extremely fast. It covered the sky and earth and fell on Chu Fengmian's head. At the same time, the sword chi of the 4 Tianjian sect's great ancestors also began to close in on Chu Fengmian, gradually forcing Chu Fengmian into the green silk. Is this the power of the great ancestors joining forces? Seeing that Chu Fengmian was about to be trapped in the green silk in an instant, a trace of shock flashed in the eyes of the warriors in the stands. Every great ancestor of the 9 domains was enough to be called a top figure in the 9 domains. Now, all the great ancestors present joined forces to deal with Chu Fengmian. Just the combination of the sword chi and the green silk. Even any great ancestor of the great ancestors couldn't escape from it. Even if he's a monstrous genius, he won't be able to pass today's test. Many people looked at Chu Fengmian and sighed. Chu Fengmian defeated the Demon Emperor and 4 great ancestors of the 6 demon sects, which was already beyond the imagination of countless people. But now there were 27 great ancestors. It was almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to pass this test. Damn it! Chu Fengmian stared at the ancient Moon Valley's ancestor Wu. The black strands of spiritual power formed by their combined efforts seemed ordinary, but Chu Fengmian could sense how tough they were. Once trapped, Chu Fengmian would be suppressed. There would be no suspense at all. Sword shattering heaven and earth. Chu Fengmian held the sword with both hands. One of the swords slashed towards the green thread, while the other slashed towards the 4 supreme ancestors of the Tianjian sect. Crack! Under Chu Fengmian's sword, the black hair began to shatter layer by layer and then collapse. On the other hand, the swords of the 4 progenitors were shattered on the spot, forcing them to take a few steps back. The 2 swords had neutralized all the danger. Everyone at the scene was trembling with fear as they watched the battle between Chu Fengmian and Ancestor Wu from the 7 sections. What a powerful sword! I can't believe that this kid could neutralize the suppression from several old ancestors. Hearing the discussion, the faces of Immortal Jian Ke and the others were extremely ugly and gloomy. The 7 supreme ancestors of the 7 sects had disregarded their status and joined forces to deal with Chu Fengmian, but they still couldn't suppress Chu Fengmian. Not only Venerable Jian Ke, but the other Ancestor Wu of the Sky Sword sect and Ancestor Wu of the Ancient Moon Valley also had the same ugly expression. Ancient Moon Heavenly Might. Sage King Invincible. 7 styles of Sky Sword. Ancient Divine Fist. In an instant, 4 terrifying forces bombarded Chu Fengmian at the same time. The Ancestor Wu from the Sage King sect and the Ancient Desolate sect couldn't help but join forces. There were a total of 19 Ancestor Wu. At this moment, they attacked together. The power they gathered was suffocating. Before such power, there was simply no one capable of contending against it. Even Chu Fengmian was under enormous pressure. The 4 Ancestor Wu brought great pressure to Chu Fengmian, not to mention the joint forces of 19 Ancestor Wu. Chu Fengmian, do you really think that you can compete with the 7 supreme sects with a few spiritual weapons and some luck? In the 9 regions, the 7 supreme sects are invincible. Anyone who dares to go against us will die. Immortal Jian Ke looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. Kill! The spiritual energy in the sky bombarded Chu Fengmian at the same time. The joint forces of 19 Ancestor Wu had never been seen in the 9 regions for thousands of years. Immortal Jian Ke's eyes were full of confidence. No matter how heaven-defying Chu Fengmian was, he couldn't leave alive under the joint forces of so many Ancestor Wu. Today, if I, Chu Fengmian, leave here alive, I will destroy the 7 supreme sects within 3 years and trample them under my feet. Chu Fengmian looked at the group of Ancestor Wu from the 7 sects and said word by word. 3 years. If Chu Fengmian was given another 3 years, he was confident that he could trample the other supreme sects under his feet. Now that he was besieged, it was the greatest danger for Chu Fengmian and also the best training for him. As long as Chu Fengmian could escape, it would be impossible for the 7 supreme sects to deal with Chu Fengmian. 3 years? Unfortunately, you won't have 3 more years to live. This day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Immortal Jian Ke laughed and said. Kill! While speaking, Immortal Jian Ke also moved. A dazzling sword light slashed down from the tip of his sword. The sky was filled with sword light. Under the joint forces of the other Ancestor Wu, the endless spiritual energy that was condensed came crashing down. I am the Sword God. Chu Fengmian moved again. The sword intent of the Sword God realm was added to the tip of Chu Fengmian's sword. Rays of sword intent fell from the sky and fell into Chu Fengmian's body. It was as if Chu Fengmian was the embodiment of invincibility, the embodiment of the Sword God. I am the Sword God. Chu Fengmian, who had stepped into this realm, was the Sword God himself. It's useless. No matter how strong your sword intent is, you can't be our opponent. Immortal Jianwang laughed ferociously. Rumble. At the moment when the countless martial techniques collided with Chu Fengmian's sword, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. It almost deafened the eardrums of the martial artists present. In the midst of the explosion, what was even more shocking was the collision of spiritual energy. At the edge of Chu Fengmian's location, the surrounding space was shattered countless times. The terrifying power was transmitted to the void and even the void was exploding. Chapter 10-14 The 27 old ancestors did not hold back when facing Chu Fengmian. They bombarded Chu Fengmian with countless martial arts techniques. The power of one old ancestor Wu was already extremely terrifying, not to mention the 27 old ancestors Wu. They joined forces and launched countless killing moves towards Chu Fengmian. Rumble! Countless spiritual energies collided in the air and Chu Fengmian's sword chi was shattered. Even the sword chi that Chu Fengmian unleashed in the divine sword realm was no match for the 27 old ancestors. Chu Fengmian's figure retreated continuously, buffering the power of the 27 old ancestors. Under the bombardment, Chu Fengmian's body shook a little. The power of the divine tree around his body was shaken and countless branches were shattered. Chu Fengmian's body had almost been smashed apart in this confrontation alone. With my current strength, I'm still far from being able to compete with them. However, as long as I can break the seal of the ancient fighting arena, I can use the Cloud Feather Palace to leave. Once I'm in the Cloud Feather Palace, even if the 27 old ancestors besiege me, I may still be able to fight them. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered and he came up with a plan in an instant. Chu Fengmian was not a brainless brute. At this moment, it was absolutely the most foolish thing to do to fight against the 27 old ancestors. Although Chu Fengmian did not receive the reward of this year's 9 Regions Genius Battle and did not receive the blood essence of Ancestor Jianwang, Chu Fengmian's realm had begun to loosen up. Just a little bit more and Chu Fengmian's strength could be further improved. As long as Chu Fengmian reached the Heavenly Fate realm, he would not be afraid even if he was besieged by the old ancestors. With Chu Fengmian's potential, his strength would definitely undergo earth-shaking changes if he could pass through this stage. Chu Fengmian's figure shuttled through the ancient fighting arena. He did not plan to fight against the 27 old ancestors. Instead, he was constantly looking for a gap in the sealed space, looking for a chance to leave. The Divine Sword Realm's sword principle is indeed terrifying. Unfortunately, your realm is still too low and too weak. If you reach the Heavenly Fate realm, it won't be so easy for us to deal with you. Immortal Jianke looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent. Just now, Chu Fengmian was able to withstand the joint attack of 27 great ancestors without dying. Most of the power was blocked by Chu Fengmian's sword that had reached the level of Sword God. For a sword cultivator, the most difficult aspect to improve was the Sword Dao, not the realm. Although Chu Fengmian's current strength was not as good as theirs, the Sword Dao of the Sword God realm was right there. As long as Chu Fengmian made a breakthrough, his strength would undergo an earth-shaking change. Reverend Jianke was very clear about this point. Sage Jianke's mind moved and several spiritual swords flew out from his body. Thousands of spiritual swords flew out one after another. There were dozens of spiritual swords had a heavenly sword. 10 were Fengmian. Heaven-destroying sword formation. The thousands of spiritual swords suddenly gathered in the air and formed a huge sword formation. It contained endless killing intent. The remaining 26 Ancestor Wu stepped into the sword formation one after another. Each of them held a spiritual sword and acted as the formation eye of the sword formation. The power of the sword formation constructed by 27 progenitors was comparable to the defensive formations of the top 7 sections. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with fear. With his eyes, he was naturally able to tell that the sword formation created by Sage Jianke had definitely reached an extremely terrifying level. Furthermore, it was a slaughtering sword formation. It only focused on slaughtering and contained extremely powerful offensive power. There were a total of 27 heavenly spiritual weapons. They were all controlled by the 27 old ancestors. The power of the sword formation was equivalent to the combined power of the 27 old ancestors. The power was unimaginable. Divine Sword Heaven Punishment. Immortal Jianke shouted coldly. The spiritual swords in the sky merged into one and formed a shocking sword light. It blasted towards Chu Fengmian. When the sword edge came out, heaven and earth would be destroyed. The power of the 27 old ancestors was gathered in the sword formation. They wanted to kill Chu Fengmian directly. Under the current circumstances, instead of suppressing Chu Fengmian, it would be better to directly kill Chu Fengmian to prevent future trouble. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's face was ferocious. If the 27 old ancestors wanted to suppress Chu Fengmian could still find a chance to escape. However, Chu Fengmian had to resist the killing sword formation. Fight! Do you really think you can kill me? Ridiculous. If I don't die today, all of you will die. All of a sudden, a strange spiritual power condensed in front of Chu Fengmian. It was this wave of spiritual energy that suddenly met the sword of slaughter. Boom! When the spiritual power approached the killing sword formation, Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. An extremely ancient aura was emitted from his body. The ancient aura soared to the sky. Ancient human emperor, enlighten all living beings. In an instant, a dazzling light burst out from the spiritual power. Behind the light, an ancient aura burst out and swept across the sky. Behind the ancient aura was an illusory figure that was slowly condensing. The illusory figure looked like a benevolent old man. However, he held the emperor jar in his hand and showed an extremely majestic expression. Even the old ancestors could not help but kneel down and worship him when they saw his majesty. Human Emperor. The ancient human emperor's shadow. Chu Fengmian's emperor jar had collected 5 fragments and recovered half of its power. It was enough to summon the ancient human emperor's shadow. The human emperor's shadow held the emperor jar. Spiritual power soared to the sky and collided with the killing sword formation. The terrifying killing intent of the killing sword formation was dissolved by a force when it got close to the emperor jar. Crack! Crack! Even the entire sky punishment sword formation began to crack. It was close to breaking. What's going on? What kind of force is this? Spiritual Master Jianwang stared at the human emperor's shadow in the sky and shouted in disbelief. Chapter 10-15. Not only immortal Jianwang and immortal Qinghong felt the same way, but the other patriarchs also felt the same way. When they saw the human emperor's shadow, they felt fear in their hearts. They were all patriarchs of the supreme realm who had gone through countless life and death battles to reach the 9th step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm. However, at that moment, all of them felt fear in their hearts. Impossible. What is that? A spiritual weapon? How can a spiritual weapon's power reach such a level? Reverend Jianwang panicked. He swept his gaze over and saw that the human emperor phantasm was formed from the power emitted from the broken jar in the sky. A broken spiritual weapon? With the power they had displayed earlier, even a heaven-ranked spiritual artifact would have been shattered by them. How could they possibly be able to force them to retreat? A spiritual weapon that could force all 27 patriarchs of the supreme realm to retreat. An extreme path celestial weapon? Is that the legendary extreme path celestial weapon? How can you have it? It has never appeared since the primordial era was destroyed. An extreme path celestial weapon is said to have the ability to kill immortals. How can you have it when none of the 7 major sects have it? Immortal Jianwang cried out in panic. Now, he understood what the broken jar was. An extreme path celestial weapon. Only an extreme path celestial weapon could force the 27 patriarchs of the supreme realm to retreat. Why does he have an extreme path celestial weapon? Didn't the extreme path celestial weapon disappear in the 9 regions? An extreme path celestial weapon is said to have the ability to kill immortals. And that shadow, who is it? Why do I feel fear and dare not to attack? The patriarchs of the supreme realm looked at the emperor jar with fear. An extreme path celestial weapon had not appeared in the 9 regions for tens of thousands of years. The extreme path celestial weapon that they knew was described in the ancient books. However, the records of the extreme path celestial weapon were the same in all the ancient books. It was extremely terrifying and no one could resist the power of an extreme path celestial weapon. What should we do? This kid has an extreme path celestial weapon. This is the legendary immortal slaying weapon. The few old ancestors exchanged glances with each other, their eyes showing signs of retreating. the reputation of an extreme Dao celestial weapon was too well known. As ancestral ancestors, they were well aware of the terrifying power of an extreme Dao celestial weapon. Just now, they were unable to do anything to Chu Fengmian even when they joined forces. If they continued to fight, they were afraid that they would also end up dying. Wait, don't panic. Enlightened Jian Ke carefully observed the Emperor Jar. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth revealed a cold smile. Chu Fengmian, do you think you can scare us with a broken extreme Dao immortal weapon? Your extreme Dao immortal weapon is actually incomplete, isn't it? If it was a real extreme grade immortal weapon, its power would have been enough to kill us. Unfortunately, you can't do that. You can only force us to retreat. Moreover, you can't use the power of a real extreme grade immortal weapon. So, you're merely putting on a strong front. Everyone, there's no need to worry. His extreme Dao immortal artifact is incomplete, and it's insufficient to pose a threat to us. The corners of Sage Jian Ke's mouth curled up in disdain. Incomplete? That's right. The aura of this extreme Dao immortal weapon seems to be slightly different from what's recorded. An incomplete extreme Dao immortal weapon. Upon hearing enlightened Jian Ke's words, the eyes of the ancestors present revealed a strange look. Vaguely, there was greed in their eyes. If Chu Fengmian really had a complete extreme Dao immortal weapon, of course, they would not be willing to go against Chu Fengmian. However, since it was an incomplete extreme Dao immortal weapon, it might not be enough to pose a threat to them. After all, they were ancestors of the Neverwither realm who were at the 9th step of the life and death steps. It seems like this lad still has many secrets. Even the extreme Dao immortal weapon is in his possession. Kill! He's just putting on a strong front. A few ancestors of the Supreme Realm shouted loudly. Suddenly, the Sky Punishment Sword formation erupted with even more powerful spiritual energy. It soared into the sky and completely repaired the sword formation that had just been broken. Lad, do you think that you can make us retreat with just an incomplete extreme Dao immortal weapon? We've already seen through your tricks. Ancestor Qing Huang looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed ferociously. No one can save you today. Everything that happens to you will belong to us. In the Sky Punishment Sword formation, an extremely powerful spiritual energy condensed on the spot. It turned into a sword of slaughter and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. This sword of slaughter was even more powerful than the previous one. Under the dazzling sword light, it contained an extremely strong killing power. Under the sword of slaughter, the heavens and earth would perish. Putting on a strong front? Very well. Since I've even used the human Emperor Jar, it'll be a pity if I don't kill a few ancestors of the Supreme Realm. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. He no longer had any scruples now. Since his identity and trump cards had all been exposed, there was no need for him to hold back. Chu Fengmian did not have the ability to kill all 27 ancestors of the Supreme Realm. However, he could still kill a few ancestors of the Supreme Realm before he left. Strength of the human emperor, strengthen my body. Chu Fengmian's mind suddenly moved. The shadow of the human emperor suddenly condensed on Chu Fengmian's body and began to merge with Chu Fengmian's figure. Faintly, Chu Fengmian now turned into the appearance of the ancient human emperor. The moment Chu Fengmian and the shadow of the human emperor merged into one, the power of the human emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hand became closer. Chu Fengmian's bloodline instantly burned. The ice and fire divine body, everything that he had encountered, was burning crazily. A steady stream of spiritual energy began to pour into the human Emperor Jar. It was almost draining Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy. The power of the human Emperor Jar finally condensed to the limit. Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was countless times stronger than that of the Supreme Realm ancestors. Even with the support of the Divine Vein, it was almost drained by the human Emperor Jar. Now, this broken human Emperor Jar, even if it was given to any Supreme Realm ancestor, they would not be able to unleash its power. Even Chu Fengmian could barely activate it. Chapter 10:16. What kind of power is this? Could it be that this man can unleash the power of an extreme path immortal weapon? In the all-heaven sword formation, the 27 patriarchs looked at Chu Fengmian with uneasiness in their eyes. In their imagination, it would be fine even if the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hand was a true extreme path immoral weapon. Even Patriarch Wu might not be able to activate an extreme path immoral weapon, let alone Chu Fengmian, who was only in the heart-refining realm. But now, seeing the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hand, no one dared to bet with Chu Fengmian. Even though the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hand looked broken, it was still an extreme path immoral weapon. "Stop him!" No one knew who shouted first. The patriarchs present looked solemn as they began to gather spiritual power and bombarded Chu Fengmian. Obviously, they did not intend to give Chu Fengmian a chance to accumulate spiritual power. The spiritual power in the sky bombarded Chu Fengmian. Under such a powerful bombardment, even a Patriarch Wu would be blasted to pieces on the spot. However, when these waves of energy struck the Emperor's jar, they couldn't shake it in the slightest. An extreme path immoral weapon, even if it was a broken one, was still not something that Patriarch Wu could shake. Now that Chu Fengmian had merged with the Emperor's shadow, all the spiritual power that bombarded Chu Fengmian was transferred to the Emperor jar. Under the bombardment of so many forces, Chu Fengmian was helpless. At the same time, these forces were cleverly transferred to the Emperor jar by Chu Fengmian. In the Emperor jar, the forces were accumulated. "You want to stop me now? It's over." Chu Fengmian's face was somewhat ferocious. The forces of the bombardment had been accumulated by Chu Fengmian into the Emperor jar, speeding up the accumulation of the Emperor jar's power. "Now, it's time for you to have a taste of being bombarded." Chu Fengmian laughed loudly, and the Emperor jar in his hands suddenly flew out. In the air, waves of spiritual power fluctuations were transmitted. Endless spiritual power was constantly emitted from the Emperor jar, condensing into an ancient majesty. Every ancestor Wu who sensed the ancient aura had a drastic change in their expressions. Their hearts were filled with terror. The spiritual power that filled the sky was crushed by the ancient aura around the Emperor jar the moment it got close to it. "Not good, retreat." Sage Jiankei's expression changed drastically as he shouted. His heaven-destroying sword formation also switched from offense to defense, intending to resist the bombardment of the Emperor jar. "You want to retreat now? It's over. The ancient human emperor will teach us for life." Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. With a thought, he controlled the Emperor jar and bombarded it with terrifying spiritual energy. The ripple of energy had surpassed progenitor Wu's. It had reached a completely different level. Even if there were 100 Ancestor Wu, they would not be able to match his strength, let alone 27 Ancestor Wu. When the power of the human Emperor jar burst out, Chu Fengmian felt a sense of exhaustion. With his current strength, he could only use the power of the Emperor jar when he pushed his power to the extreme. At this moment, Chu Fengmian felt a little weak. Even divine power could not replenish Chu Fengmian's spiritual power in such a short period of time. Even if Chu Fengmian killed a few Ancestor Wu with this bombardment, it would not be particularly meaningful to him. What he needed was to break the seal of the surrounding space. Break! Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. The power of the Emperor jar blasted out, turning into a spiritual impact that blasted out from the ancient fighting ring. Rumble! The sound of the thunderous explosion resounded through the entire ring. The ancient fighting ring shook violently. In an instant, the spiritual power of the Emperor jar poured down. Crack! The sky-vanquishing sword array that was formed in front of enlightened Jiankei suddenly shattered at this moment. As cracks appeared, in the next moment, it shattered on the spot. Puff! Sage Jiankei, who was at the heart of the sword formation, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood essence. The sword formation shattered on the spot. The Ancestor Wu present were all sent flying. Almost everyone's face was pale as they were severely injured. Although they were severely injured, they did not die. The heaven-destroying sword formation had blocked 90% of the power of the Emperor jar. Although the remaining power was enough to seriously injure them, it was not enough to kill them. However, they were not in a good condition either. Each of them had spat out a few mouthfuls of blood essence. The higher the realm of an expert, the more difficult it was for them to recover from their injuries. Ordinary injuries were naturally not a big deal. However, they had been beaten to the point of spitting out their essence blood. This was a serious injury to their tendons and bones. It had damaged their foundation. They would not be able to recover without a few decades or 100 years. It could be said that these people would not be able to fight again within 100 years. At the cost of 27 Ancestor Wu's inability to fight again within 100 years, they had exchanged Chu Fengmian's life. In order to deal with Chu Fengmian, they had paid such a heavy price. This was absolutely unexpected. What a powerful kid. I didn't expect him to be able to activate the power of an extreme path immortal weapon. It's just a broken extreme path immortal weapon, but it can erupt with such terrifying power. However, this kid is already exhausted. He no longer has the power to activate the extreme path immortal weapon. Countless gazes were fixed on Chu Fengmian. These Ancestor Wu's eyes were full of killing intent as they looked at Chu Fengmian. They had already paid such a heavy price today. No matter what, they must keep Chu Fengmian here. Chu Fengmian, stay here. Sage Jianke roared ferociously. He took the initiative to attack. His body moved and approached Chu Fengmian. With a move of his palm, he blasted towards Chu Fengmian. Although he was injured and only had 50% of his peak strength, Chu Fengmian was also like a lamp that had run out of oil. Half of his strength was enough to deal with Chu Fengmian, who was exhausted. Sky Sword Absolute Seal. 5 spiritual swords flew out from Reverend Jianke's palm and suppressed Chu Fengmian one after another. These 5 spiritual swords were the suppression technique of the Tianjin sect. Chu Fengmian had too many secrets. The benefits of killing Chu Fengmian were far more than suppressing Chu Fengmian. Chapter 10:17. Are you courting death? Chu Fengmian sneered when he saw spiritual master Jianke rushing toward him alone. On the other side of the phone, the Emperor's jar appeared in his palm again, shining with a bright light. The moment he saw the Emperor jar, immortal Jianke had the thought of retreating. His eyes were filled with fear. The power that the Emperor jar had just unleashed had left a deep impression on him, so much so that he wanted to retreat. But soon, spiritual master Jianke's lips curled into a disdainful smile. Chu Fengmian, do you think you can scare me away with this extreme grade immortal weapon? Do you think you can still activate it? Don't waste your energy struggling. Spiritual master Jianke said coldly. He could clearly see Chu Fengmian's lack of spiritual power at first glance. At this time, spiritual master Jianke would never believe that Chu Fengmian still had the ability to activate the Emperor jar. Is that so? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered with coldness. Then I'll show you. The Emperor jar in Chu Fengmian's palm moved again, emitting a dazzling light. Under the dazzling light, the energy of the Emperor jar rose steadily and began to condense. This is impossible. Spiritual master Jianke stared at the Emperor jar in Chu Fengmian's palm and shouted in disbelief when he saw the Emperor jar gathering spiritual energy. Chu Fengmian should have no spiritual energy left. It was impossible for him to activate the Emperor jar now. Reverend Jianke could tell that even for him, being able to activate the mortal Emperor jar once was his limit. It was impossible for him to activate it twice in such a short period of time. Under spiritual master Jianke's incredulous gaze, Chu Fengmian waved his hand and suddenly tore a crack in front of him. Behind the fissure were countless spirit stones. They were all royal-grade spirit stones. Tens of millions, perhaps even billions, of royal-grade spirit stones flew out from the fissure. A steady stream of spiritual stones were thrown into the Emperor jar, and it began to burn. All the burning spiritual energy was integrated into the Emperor jar. Burning spiritual stones? Is this kid planning to burn spirit stones to forcibly activate the power of the extreme grade immortal weapon? All eyes were on Chu Fengmian. When they saw the countless royal-grade spiritual stones in front of Chu Fengmian, many of them were stunned. These were all royal-grade spirit stones. Even the fact that they could take out several million royal-grade spirit stones at once was a sign of the heavens. In just a short period of time, hundreds of millions of royal-grade spiritual stones were poured into the human emperor's jar. Even the 7 major sects would not be able to take out so many royal-grade spiritual stones at once. Is this kid crazy? He's burning such a large amount of spirit stones just like that? Many martial artists in the spectators' stands were extremely jealous. Their hearts were bleeding as they watched the spirit stones burn. A royal-grade spirit stone was extremely attractive to any patriarch. It could be said that it was extremely precious. Now, Chu Fengmian had tossed these hundreds of millions of royal-grade spirit stones into the emperor jar without any hesitation. He forcibly burned spirit stones to activate the emperor jar. This was something that even the wealthiest people would not be able to do. Retreat. Enlightened Master Jianwang was a little frightened when he saw more and more royal-grade spirit stones being poured into the emperor jar. Although the power of the emperor jar that was forcibly activated by burning spirit stones was less than 1% of its original power, it was still fatal to him. Attack quickly, we can't let this kid accumulate more power. The other patriarchs' faces turned gloomy when they saw the spiritual energy gathering in the emperor jar increasing. They were also afraid of the power of the emperor jar. If they were affected, none of them would be able to withstand it. 7 or 8 figures were approaching Chu Fengmian at the same time. They joined forces with enlightened Master Jianwang to attack Chu Fengmian. More and more people are coming to die. No matter how many of them come, they will all die. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with sarcasm. When the 7 or 8 figures were close to Chu Fengmian suddenly activated his mind and the power of the emperor jar was released. Boom! The ancient power once again erupted from the emperor jar, turning into a blast of air that spread in all directions. This time, the power of the emperor jar was less than 1% of its original power. However, this time, there was no all-heavens formation to help them withstand the attack. Moreover, each of the ancestral sovereigns who were present was severely injured. Even 1% of the power of the emperor jar was not fatal to them. No! In an instant, the 7 or 8 figures in enlightened Master Jianwang were swept away by the power of the emperor jar. Their bodies were constantly being torn apart by the power of the Rumhuang jar. Puff! Puff! Clouds of blood mist exploded in the airwaves of the emperor jar. Even immortal Jianwang was torn apart on the spot by the airwaves, leaving behind only a cloud of blood mist. In front of Chu Fengmian, the 9 patriarchs who were bombarded by the power of the emperor jar were all killed by the power of the emperor jar, leaving only a puff of blood mist behind. Silence. The ancient gladiator arena suddenly became silent. Countless martial artists were speechless when they saw the puff of blood mist in front of Chu Fengmian. A total of 9 patriarchs fell just like that. In front of the emperor jar, they died on the spot. Even enlightened Master Jianwang, the best among the patriarchs, died. For hundreds of years, the 9 domains had never had 9 patriarchs fall. Including the 2 patriarchs from the 6 Paths demon sect who died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Now, a total of 11 patriarchs were killed by Chu Fengmian. The rest of you, one day, I will kill you all one by one. Chu Fengmian looked at the remaining patriarchs. After activating the emperor jar twice, Chu Fengmian's power had reached its limit. He could not fight anymore. Otherwise, Chu Fengmian would kill them all. Originally, Chu Fengmian's plan was to kill enlightened Master Jianwang and then leave. Killing 8 more great ancestors was already enough for him to make a profit. Let's go! Chu Fengmian moved his body and went out through the cracks in the surrounding space, disappearing without a trace. Chapter 10:18. It's safe now. Chu Fengmian looked at the Cloud Feather Palace in front of him and felt relieved. Chu Fengmian had left the ancient gladiator arena in a hurry and returned to the Cloud Feather Palace before the remaining ancestor Wu could react. When Chu Fengmian killed Taoist Jianwang and the other 8 ancestor Wu, Chu Fengmian had almost no spiritual power left in his body. Using the power of the Emperor Jar twice in a row was enough to drain Chu Fengmian's spiritual power completely. Chu Fengmian was in an extremely dangerous situation at that time. If the remaining Ancestor Wu attacked Chu Fengmian again, Chu Fengmian would be dead for sure. Fortunately, the scene of Chu Fengmian using the power of the Emperor Jar twice in a row and killing the 9 Ancestor Wu had shocked everyone present. Thus, Chu Fengmian found an opportunity to leave the ancient gladiator arena and avoid a lot of trouble. Chu Fengmian was already satisfied to be able to leave the ancient gladiator arena unscathed. However, it was a pity that Chu Fengmian did not obtain the essence blood of progenitor Jianwang. Chu Fengmian had originally thought that the essence blood of progenitor Jianwang should be in the hands of Jian Ke Enlightened. Therefore, Chu Fengmian had wanted to take the risk and kill Jian Ke Enlightened. However, Chu Fengmian did not see the essence blood of progenitor Jianwang in Jian Ke Enlightened's empty ring. The myriad treasure Sky Jade Talisman was also not there. It seemed like the reward of the 9-region genius battle was not with Jian Ke Enlightened. However, the essence blood of the 9 Ancestor Wu was still a great harvest for Chu Fengmian. It should be known that every Ancestor Wu stood at the peak of the 9 regions. Devouring the essence blood of 1 Ancestor Wu would increase Chu Fengmian's strength significantly. Devouring all the essence blood of the 9 Ancestor Wu would increase Chu Fengmian's strength significantly. Luo Shi. 6-Path Demon Sect. Demon Emperor. Although Chu Fengmian had returned to Cloud Feather Palace, he didn't look relaxed in the slightest. The Demon Emperor's words were still fresh in Chu Fengmian's mind. Although Luo Shi wasn't in much danger at the moment, the Demon Emperor already knew about Luo Shi and Chu Fengmian. If that happened, Luo Shi would be in grave danger in the 6 Paths Demon Gate. Chu Fengmian couldn't delay any longer. He had to go to the 6 Paths Demonic Gates. Let's refine the blood essence of these 9 Supreme Ancestors first. Even with the Holy Pulse, Chu Fengmian's depleted spiritual energy couldn't be recovered in a short period of time. He closed his eyes tightly and slowly began to refine the blood essence of the 9 Supreme Ancestors. Even the godly tree couldn't refine the blood essence of the 9 Supreme Ancestors in one go. Therefore, Chu Fengmian took half of it for himself to refine and improve his cultivation base. Chu Fengmian's current level was close to reaching the peak of the heart refinement realm. As long as he took one more step, he would be able to step into the heavenly mandate realm and become a ruler. Even if the blood essence can't help me improve my cultivation base, it should be enough to bring my cultivation base to the peak of the heart refinement realm. When the time comes, I can choose to break through. Chu Fengmian sat on the ground. The spiritual energy in his body slowly condensed and began to devour the blood essence of the Supreme Ancestors. The blood essence of the Supreme Ancestors in the immortal realm was almost the purest spiritual energy without a trace of impurities. Chu Fengmian could refine it easily. However, what Chu Fengmian was doing now wasn't just refining the blood essence. He was also recalling the battle that had just taken place in his mind. The life and death battles that Chu Fengmian experienced in the ancient gladiator arena were great opportunities for him. In particular, Chu Fengmian's sword principle had reached the 9th level of the Sword God realm, the I Am Sword God realm. This was the greatest improvement for Chu Fengmian. The improvement of his sword principle was something that benefited Chu Fengmian immensely. As Chu Fengmian's cultivation base increased, his sword principle would also become more powerful. There was extremely rich spiritual energy everywhere in the ruins of End. It was the same in the Heavenly Feather Divine Territory. The spiritual energy here was much richer than in the countless sacred grounds of the 9 domains. However, it had become thin now. From where Chu Fengmian was, above his head, a huge vortex was continuously devouring the surrounding spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in the entire Heavenly Feather Divine Territory was being devoured by this huge vortex. What kind of cultivation technique is the young master cultivating? Why does he need to devour so much spiritual energy? Not far away, in front of the palace, Elder Yun couldn't help but exclaim as he watched Chu Fengmian continuously devour the spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in the Heavenly Feather Divine Territory was not easy to be sucked dry in one breath, even if it was a Supreme Ancestor. However, it was being devoured in front of Chu Fengmian. The spiritual energy of the heavenly feather divine territory was not something that the more one devoured, the better it was. If it were other warriors, they would have exploded and died long ago. Chu Fengmian's appetite was much bigger than those demonic beasts. However, the heavenly feather palace was in the ruins of End, so Elder Yun wasn't worried. When the spiritual energy in the heavenly feather divine territory was almost completely devoured, Elder Yun suddenly waved his hand, and a crack tore open in the heavenly feather divine territory. Behind this crack was the ruins of End. The endless spiritual energy in the ruins of End began to pour in, but it was still being devoured by the vortex in front of Chu Fengmian. On the other side, behind Chu Fengmian, the shadow of the ancient war dragon had begun to appear. Drops of ancient war dragon blood essence were condensed continuously. With each drop of ancient war dragon blood essence condensed, Chu Fengmian's aura became stronger. An entire day passed. The vortex in front of Chu Fengmian began to devour the spiritual energy of the heavenly feather divine territory at a slower speed, and then gradually disappeared. Chu Fengmian's tightly shut eyes also slowly opened. 99,000 drops. Chu Fengmian felt that the amount of ancient war dragon blood essence in his body had reached the level of 99,000 drops. Thinking back to when he was in the ancient gladiator arena, his strength had improved again. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's realm had also reached the peak of the heart-refining realm. 100,000. Condensing 100,000 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence is when I step into the destiny realm. Chapter 10:19. Although he was only short of 1,000 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence, Chu Fengmian could feel that his strength had reached a bottleneck. He needed an opportunity to advance further. However, this time, with the help of the blood essence of several supreme ancestors, Chu Fengmian had finally reached the peak of the heart-refining realm. This was enough for Chu Fengmian. Congratulations, young master. Your strength has improved further. Elder Yun said with a smile as he watched Chu Fengmian slowly wake up. His choice of letting Chu Fengmian inherit Yunyu Heavenly Palace was definitely the best choice. Chu Fengmian's strength would change dramatically every time he returned to Yunyu Heavenly Palace. This kind of growth speed made Elder Yun gasp in amazement. Yunyu Heavenly Palace was once a sect that dominated the 9 regions. At its peak, Yunyu Heavenly Palace could be said to be more terrifying than the current 7 major sects combined. Even so, among the countless geniuses that were born in Yunyu Heavenly Palace, there were very few who could be compared with Chu Fengmian. How is Yueli? Chu Fengmian asked. Han Yueli had been accepting the inheritance of Yunyu Heavenly Palace since she came to the palace. When Chu Fengmian returned, Han Yueli had already accepted more than half of the inheritance. It was almost time for her to come out of seclusion. The inheritance of Yunyu Heavenly Palace was no small matter. If it was not for the fact that Chu Fengmian cultivated the dragon fighting skill, which could not be replaced by other cultivation skills, he would also want to accept the inheritance of Yunyu Heavenly Palace. Once Han Yueli finished accepting the inheritance of Yunyu Heavenly Palace, her strength would change dramatically. Miss Han's inheritance is coming soon. She should come out of seclusion in 3 to 5 days. Elder Yun said honestly. Everything in Yunyu Heavenly Palace was under his control. Naturally, he knew what Han Yueli knew. 3 to 5 days. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. 3 to 5 days was extremely short for a martial artist. However, Chu Fengmian could not afford to wait any longer. It seems that I can't wait for Yueli to come out of seclusion. Chu Fengmian sighed softly. He also wanted to wait for 3 to 5 days, but now there was no chance for Chu Fengmian to wait. In this short period of time, Chu Fengmian felt a kind of anxiety from the bottom of his heart. This anxiety came from Luo Shi. Chu Fengmian had left a drop of essence blood on Luo Shi's body. He could feel that Luo Shi's current situation was getting worse and worse. It seemed like the Demon Emperor was already planning to take action against Luo Shi. If the Demon Emperor were to capture Luo Shi, Chu Fengmian would become even more passive. Chu Fengmian couldn't delay his trip to the 6 Paths Demon Gates any longer. I want to leave Cloud Feather Palace and protect you, Ellie. Chu Fengmian looked at Elder Yun and said calmly. Before Elder Yun could reply, Chu Fengmian's figure disappeared from the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. After passing through Cloud Feather Palace's teleportation array, Chu Fengmian arrived at the 9 realms. Chu Fengmian moved his body and traveled through the void to the depths of the void. There was a map in his mind. It was a map that led to the 6 Paths Demon Gates. The 6 Paths Demon Gates weren't located in the 9 realms. Instead, they were hidden in a small world in the depths of the void. Before Luoxi left, she left this map behind and gave it to Chu Fengmian. Now, this map could be put to good use. There was no danger in the void turbulence. However, for Chu Fengmian's current strength, the void turbulence was nothing to him. He shuttled through the void turbulence and flew in the direction of the 6 Paths Demon Gates. Luoxi, I will bring you back. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. He should save his woman. Even if it was a tiger's den, Chu Fengmian would barge in. The 6 Paths Demon Gates. The Demon Emperor. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent. No one had ever dared to threaten Chu Fengmian, especially with Chu Fengmian's woman. This time, Chu Fengmian was going to the 6 Paths Demon Gates not only to take Luoxi away, but also to kill the Demon Emperor. No one had ever dared to threaten Chu Fengmian, not even the Demon Emperor. Kid, do you really plan to go alone? Xing Xian suddenly asked in his mind. The 6 Paths Demon Gates used to be a famous force in the 9 realms. They used to stand at the peak of the 9 realms. Even though they have declined, they are still as powerful as a starving camel. You are courting death by going alone. The strength of the 6 Paths Demon Gates was just the tip of the iceberg. However, the Demon Emperor alone was enough to bring 4 supreme ancestors with him. This was enough to prove the strength of the 6 Paths Demon Gates. Chu Fengmian knew how dangerous it was to go alone to the 6 Paths Demon Gates. However, there wasn't a trace of fear on Chu Fengmian's face. So what? Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of the 6 Paths Demon Gates. This time, Chu Fengmian had to go. Even if he went alone, he would make the 6 Paths Demon Gates suffer. Retreat? Fear? Chu Fengmian had lived 2 lives. He had already died once. What was there to be afraid of? In his previous life, Chu Fengmian was powerless. He could only watch as his master and senior brothers and sisters died. He couldn't do anything about it. In this life, Chu Fengmian kept improving his cultivation base and strength. He wanted to protect everything that he wanted to protect. If he couldn't even protect his woman, what was the point of cultivating? Sigh. Xing Xian sighed when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. This time, he couldn't dissuade Chu Fengmian. The little guy should be able to help you. Suddenly, Xing Xian changed the topic and said. The little guy's strength has recovered. Little 9? Chu Fengmian's eyes lit up when he heard Xing Xian's words. The little guy was naturally referring to Little 9. He summoned Little 9 with his mind, and Little 9 appeared in Chu Fengmian's arms. Little 9 had already woken up, and it seemed that his aura had completely recovered. In just one day, Little 9's strength had fully recovered. This speed was comparable to Chu Fengmian's divine pulse. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but marvel at the strength of an innate divine beast. The recovery ability of Little 9's strength was beyond the reach of other cultivators. With Little 9's help, this battle isn't hopeless. Chapter 1020. Little 9's strength had been demonstrated in the ancient gladiator arena. In a short period of time, even the combined strength of 4 ancestors was no match for Little 9. In a short period of explosive power, Little 9's strength was stronger than that of Ancestor Wu, who was in the immortal realm. Although the duration was very short, this sudden burst of power was already a great help to Chu Fengmian. As long as the timing was right, it was enough to cause great harm to several ancestors. Chu Fengmian was thinking about this as his figure approached the depths of the void. The moment he reached the depths of the void, Chu Fengmian suddenly slashed out with the spiritual sword in his hand. The space was torn apart on the spot, and behind the space was an ancient demon realm. It was revealed. This ancient demon realm was a mountain peak. On the peak of the mountain, there was the largest palace, which was emitting demon will. 6 demon peaks. Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. The mountain peak in front of him was where the 6 demon gates were located. Chu Fengmian felt that Luoshi was now in the 6 demon peaks. Chu Fengmian? In the 6 demon peaks, Luoshi's eyes suddenly flickered. Now she also felt Chu Fengmian's arrival. After a short moment of joy, Luoshi's heart was no longer nervous. The demon emperor did not kill her directly in the House of Storms in order to draw Chu Fengmian out. Today, Chu Fengmian really came. Don't worry. Chu Fengmian also felt Luoshi's anxiety and said to himself calmly, I'll take you home. After muttering to himself, Chu Fengmian looked at the 6 demon peaks in front of him. He slowly raised the sword in his hand and slashed out. Demon Emperor, come out and face your death. As his voice fell, the sword slashed out in the air. The moment the sword slashed out, countless restrictions condensed in the 6 demon peaks, forming the protective mountain array. However, under the bombardment of the sword, countless cracks began to appear on the protective mountain array. Crack! A crisp sound rang out from the 6 demon peaks. Countless disciples of the 6 demon gates couldn't help but raise their heads and look at the celestial pole. They couldn't believe what they saw. Was the protective array of the 6 demon peaks broken just like that? There was actually someone who dared to come to the 6 demon gates and break the restrictions of the 6 demon peaks? Especially when it came to Chu Fengmian. The demon emperor came out to die? Saying such words in the territory of the 6 Paths Demon Gate was no longer arrogant, but courting death. Chu Fengmian? You still dare to come to the 6 Paths Demon Gate? A few figures flew out from the 6 demon peaks. The 2 old men were Demon Supremacy Gili and Demon Supremacy 9 Abyss, whom Chu Fengmian had met once at the ancient gladiator arena. The 2 of them had nearly died at Chu Fengmian's hands back in the ancient fighting arena. At that time, Chu Fengmian's main goal was to kill the Devil Emperor's incarnation. That was why he let the 2 of them live. Why not? What about the Demon Emperor? Get him out here. Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold as he glanced at this group of figures. There were a total of 15 figures, and all of them were ancestral ancestors of the immortal realm. The foundation of the 6 Paths Demon Gates was indeed more terrifying than Chu Fengmian had imagined. If Thousand Change Prince and Withered Bones Demon Supremacy were added to the number of ancestral ancestors of the 6 Paths Demon Gates, there were a total of 17 ancestral ancestors of the immortal realm in the 6 Paths Demon Gates. This number was not inferior to the 7 Paths Demon Gates. The 15 ancestral ancestors of the 6 Paths Demon Gates looked at Chu Fengmian with cold eyes filled with killing intent. The 6 Paths Demon Gates had never been trampled on by others. Chu Fengmian had barged in and shattered the protective array of the 6 demon peaks with a single strike. It was a slap to the face of the 6 Paths Demon Gates. Kid, you want to see the Holy Emperor? One of the ancestral ancestors of the 6 Paths Demon Gates said with a hoarse voice as he sized Chu Fengmian up. I was wondering who you were. You're just a heart-refining realm kid. How dare you act so presumptuously in our 6 Paths Demon Gates? Kids nowadays are getting more and more arrogant. You want to see the Holy Emperor? When we capture you, you'll have the chance to see the Holy Emperor. As he spoke, the hoarse ancestral ancestors of the 6 Paths Demon Gates swept towards Chu Fengmian with a flick of his sleeve. Be careful, Guillermo. This kid's strength is extremely strange. Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss could not help but warn Guillermo when he saw Guillermo making his move. He had fought with Chu Fengmian before. Naturally, he knew that Chu Fengmian's strength was not as simple as judging by his eyes. However, his warning came too late. How dare an old man act presumptuously in front of me? Murderous intent appeared in Chu Fengmian's eyes. The Sword God Realm Sword intent suddenly gathered at the tip of his sword and the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword was unsheathed. A dazzling sword light pierced towards Guillermo's sword break. Swoosh! The dazzling sword light shot up into the sky. The demon gates that filled the sky were shattered by the sword light. Guillermo was horrified and he retreated continuously. However, Chu Fengmian's sword light was astonishingly fast. In an instant, the sword light split into thousands of sword lights and pierced towards Guillermo Dai. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. Guillermo's body was pierced by thousands of sword lights at the same time. He turned into a cloud of blood mist and died on the spot. An ancestor of the Supreme Realm was killed by Chu Fengmian's sword. Even the other ancestor of the Six-Path Demon sects could not react in time. They did not even have time to support Guillermo. Guillermo was killed on the spot. This kind of strength and speed was definitely not something a heart-refining realm martial artist could achieve. Who is this kid? What a strange kid. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Chu Fengmian fearlessly. Ancestor Wu, who was in the immortal realm, had a shocking vitality. As long as it was not instantly fatal, he could recover. It was not easy for an ancestor of the Supreme Realm to kill another ancestor of the Supreme Realm. Guillermo's strength was comparable to the ancestor of the immortal realm. Although he was not strong, he was still a wanderer. They were stunned and could not believe that he was killed by Chu Fengmian. This person is Chu Fengmian, the one who forced the Demon Emperor into a desperate situation in the Nine Regions Genius battle. Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss looked at Chu Fengmian and said slowly. What? It's him? Ancestor of the Supreme Realm did not have much reaction when he heard Chu Fengmian's name. Chapter 1021. When the Demon Emperor was participating in the Nine Regions Genius battle, the Six Paths Demon sect's old ancestors thought that the Demon Emperor would definitely win the battle. Chu Fengmian's sudden appearance had evaded the Demon Emperor's championship and caused the Demon Emperor to suffer heavy losses. Losing 8 incarnations in a row was a huge blow to the Devil Emperor. In their opinion, the Demon Emperor was the most talented genius in the 9 regions. Even Jian Zhanxian and the others could not be compared to the Demon Emperor. They had never thought that someone could surpass the Demon Emperor. Before this, there were still some people who scoffed at the rumors. Now that they had seen Chu Fengmian kill Puppet Demon with a single strike, they no longer had such thoughts. Come out, Demon Emperor. Otherwise, everyone from the Six Paths Demon sect will die today. Chu Fengmian held the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and shouted coldly. He knew that the Demon Emperor was still hiding in the Six Paths Demon sect. However, the Demon Emperor did not dare to act recklessly. Chu Fengmian had killed 8 of his incarnations. If he had not cultivated the Nirvana divine body to the Great Completion realm, the Demon Emperor would be his original body now. Once Chu Fengmian killed his original body, the Demon Emperor would die for real. There was no way for him to survive. That was why the Demon Emperor had chosen to hide. Kid, don't be too arrogant. This is the Six Paths Demon sect. How dare you act presumptuously here? Let's attack together and kill this kid. Another old ancestor from the Six Paths Demon sect shouted angrily. Chu Fengmian had broken into the Six Paths Demon sect's territory, destroyed the mountain protection array, and killed an old ancestor with a single strike. No matter what, they would not let Chu Fengmian leave today. However, this old ancestor was smart. He could see that Chu Fengmian's strength had surpassed the ordinary immortal realm old ancestor. Anyone who encountered Chu Fengmian alone would be at a disadvantage. They might even be killed on the spot. Therefore, this time, the 14 old ancestors attacked at the same time. The sky was filled with demonic intent and countless martial skills bombarded Chu Fengmian. No matter how many of you come, I am not afraid today. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent. Today, whoever dared to stand in Chu Fengmian's way would die. Ju Kei. The Titanic Gate Godly Sword appeared in Chu Fengmian's right hand. Both swords were unsheathed at the same time. Divine Light. Chu Fengmian's cultivation began to climb. In the blink of an eye, he stepped into the Heaven's Mandate realm. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's power increased by dozens of times. Double swords shatter heaven. The 2 spiritual swords were unsheathed at the same time and slashed through the air. 2 sword lights that were tens of thousands of feet long were shot out at the same time. Then, the spiritual energy that filled the sky collided with each other. Boom! At the center of the collision of countless spiritual energies, a terrifying force erupted, causing the 6 demon peaks below to tremble. Many disciples of the 6 Paths Demon Gate were killed by the tremors and turned into blood mists that filled the sky. A huge vortex appeared above Chu Fengmian's head. The blood essence and blood mist of all the warriors were swallowed by this vortex. Damn it! Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss was infuriated when he saw the disciples of the 6 Paths Demon Gate being killed. He could see that Chu Fengmian had purposely used the aftershock of the sword to shake the surroundings. The power of the aftershock was of no use to ancestral sovereigns. The impact could be recovered in an instant. However, it was not fatal to the disciples of the 6 Paths Demon Gate below. The disciples of the 6 Paths Demon Gate were pure demonic cultivators. They were cruel and merciless. Chu Fengmian would not show any mercy to them no matter how many they killed. The blood mist was swallowed by Chu Fengmian's body and was converted into pure spiritual energy by the Dragon War skill. Today, I will use your blood essences to help me achieve a breakthrough, so that my strength can improve further. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. Before the ancestral sovereigns could recover from their shock, another 2 sword lights were shot out. Boom! Boom! The 2 sword lights exploded in the air and sent 7 to 8 ancestral sovereigns flying. Although they were only sent flying and did not suffer any substantial damage, the ancestral sovereigns of the 6 Paths Demon Gate looked gloomy. The 14 ancestral sovereigns came to besiege Chu Fengmian, but they were still sent flying by him. They could not even deal with a young fellow in the heart-tempering realm. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, they could clearly see his cultivation level. He was only in the heart-tempering realm. Even with the support of the Titanic Divine Light, he was only an emperor in the heavenly fate realm. In their eyes, such a cultivation level was no different from an ant. However, such an ant was stepping on their faces. How could they tolerate it? What made them even angrier was that every time Chu Fengmian attacked, he would purposely lead the aftershock of the sword chi to the 6 demon peaks. The 6 demon peaks no longer had the protection of the mountain guarding formation. Every time the aftershock hit, several disciples of the 6 Paths Demon Gate would be killed. The blood essence of the disciples would be devoured by Chu Fengmian. If this continued, Chu Fengmian would only become stronger. The longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. Don't waste any more time with him. Show me your true strength. Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss shouted as if he had made a decision. The other ancestral sovereigns nodded without hesitation and shouted after hearing Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss's words. God-slaying. Suddenly, a surge of spiritual energy shot up to the sky from each of the ancestral sovereigns. A total of 14 surges of spiritual energy began to condense in the air. Gradually, a gigantic formation began to take shape. The 14 ancestral sovereigns were the eyes of the formation. The power of the formation merged their strength into one. God-slaying of the 6 paths. Boom! The 14 ancestral sovereigns shouted in unison. Within the formation, countless surges of spiritual energy blasted toward Chu Fengmian. When Chu Fengmian saw the 14 ancestral sovereigns condensing the formation and combining their strength, his eyes were filled with fear. However, before he could think, the surges of spiritual energy blasted toward him, not giving him any chance to react. Earth-splitting dual swords. Chu Fengmian held 2 spiritual swords in his hands. The Sword God Realm sword principle was integrated into the 2 spiritual swords. The earth-splitting sword was slashed out. Boom! Chapter 1022. The 6-path God-slaying array was the most mysterious array of the 6-path demon sects. It was also one of the foundations of the 6-path demon sects to dominate the 9 regions. The 6-path God-slaying array was able to gather the power of all the array eyes together. Chu Fengmian could still choose to defeat the 14 ancestors one by one. However, once their power was gathered together, it would be unshakable by any of the ancestors. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's two sword lights were shattered by the spiritual power. What a strong power! Chu Fengmian frowned. The six-path demon sects were sects from tens of thousands of years ago. Although Chu Fengmian had heard about the six-path demon sects, he obviously did not know much about the six-path god-slaying array. However, this power alone was enough to deal with Chu Fengmian. The sword chi was broken, and this spiritual energy directly bombarded Chu Fengmian. It didn't give Chu Fengmian any time to breathe, and it rapidly bombarded him. Oh no! Chu Fengmian instinctively felt a sense of danger. Even when he was besieged by dozens of ancestors from the seven sects in the ancient gladiator arena, Chu Fengmian did not have such a feeling. Because when the ancestors from the seven sects besieged Chu Fengmian, they mostly fought on their own. Although they also used the array, it was far from being comparable to the array of the six-path demon sects. However, the power gathered by the array of the six-path demon sects had far surpassed Chu Fengmian's. In an instant, Chu Fengmian felt a chill. He felt that he was about to die. A warrior at his level could almost predict his own life and death. When he felt the power, Chu Fengmian even felt that he was about to die. The situation was very dangerous. The power of the Tree of God, support. In an instant, Chu Fengmian did not hesitate and fully released the power of the Tree of God. Previously, when Chu Fengmian was cultivating, he only devoured half of the essence blood. The other half was devoured by the Tree of God. The Tree of God had accumulated this power. When the spiritual power bombarded him, Chu Fengmian had no way to dodge it. He could only take it head-on. Chu Fengmian's aura didn't change in the slightest. However, several thick and solid roots were stationed around Chu Fengmian's body. As a result, Chu Fengmian's body was unbelievably tough. Boom! When Chu Fengmian pushed his physical body to the extreme, all of this power bombarded Chu Fengmian's body. The 14 Ancestor Wu's joint attack, with the support of the six-path god-destroying formation, had displayed the full strength of the 14 Ancestor Wu's forces perfectly. This brat is going to die. Killing this brat will remove a great problem for the Saint Emperor, Jianchen murmured. Many eyes looked in Chu Fengmian's direction as they slowly opened their mouths. None of them felt that Chu Fengmian had any chance of surviving under such power. Even an immortal realm Ancestor Wu would not be able to withstand the joint attack of 14 Ancestor Wusless. Moreover, Chu Fengmian was only in the cultivating heart realm. Only those who had surpassed the steps of life and death could withstand such power. However, such a level would only appear in legends. It would never appear in Chu Fengmian's body. This brat, if he doesn't die, he will definitely surpass all of us in the future. He might even reach that incredible level. Demon Venerate 9 Abyss sighed as he looked in Chu Fengmian's direction. However, he felt a little relieved. Chu Fengmian's talent was too terrifying. It was so terrifying that he didn't want to be Chu Fengmian's enemy. Such an enemy must be killed in order to be at ease. Cough cough. Just as everyone heaved a sigh of relief, a cough was heard. Then, a figure slowly walked out from the center of the spiritual power explosion. What? He didn't die. The moment Chu Fengmian walked out from the center of the spiritual power explosion, Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss and the others were stunned. They couldn't believe it. Under such a spiritual power bombardment, any one of them would have died if they had chosen to take it. Who would have thought that Chu Fengmian would survive and withstand such a bombardment? However, even though Chu Fengmian managed to resist the bombardment, he still felt terrible. His body had almost been torn apart by the power of the attack. Fortunately, the Tree of God had been protecting Chu Fengmian's body. Countless roots were firmly embedded in Chu Fengmian's body, allowing him to withstand the attack. Don't give him a chance to breathe. Kill him. He barely withstood it once. It's impossible for him to withstand it a second time. The other ancestors of the 6 demon sects also reacted. In an instant, the 14 ancestors of the 6 demon sects attacked together. Another spiritual power fell from the sky and bombarded Chu Fengmian. Humph! Chu Fengmian had suffered a great loss last time. This time, Chu Fengmian naturally knew that he was no match for the 14 ancestors of the 6 demon sects. The moment the 14 ancestors of the 6 demon sects attacked Chu Fengmian's body suddenly retreated. He's trying to escape? Catch him! Seeing Chu Fengmian's action, the other 4 or 5 ancestors of the 6 demon sects gave up on attacking. Instead, they channeled their spiritual power and condensed countless spiritual power bombs, enveloping Chu Fengmian from all directions. All of Chu Fengmian's escape routes were sealed off. However, when the spiritual power bombs were about to reach Chu Fengmian's body suddenly disappeared. He disappeared in the sky under everyone's gaze. Disappeared? No! Look, there's a ray of light. The ancestors of the 6 demon sects who were present were all famous figures. They naturally knew that Chu Fengmian couldn't really disappear under such circumstances. They gathered their spiritual consciousness to investigate carefully. However, they saw an extremely fast ray of light in the sky. This ray of light was Chu Fengmian. Under Chu Fengmian's seat, there were 8 ancient war dragons pulling the war dragon treasure carriage. It rushed through the sky and rushed towards the 6 demon sects formation. What kind of speed is this? Heavenly Demon Treasure Carriage. It's the Heavenly Demon Treasure Carriage. Chapter 1023. In the 6 demon peaks, a ray of light was traveling through the sky at an extremely fast speed. This ray of light was the war dragon carriage pulled by the 8 ancient war dragons. It was once the most precious treasure of the 9 demon city, the Heavenly Demon Carriage. When Chu Fengmian was in the ancient gladiator arena, he did not take out this supreme treasure. It was not because the battle dragon treasure chariot was weak, but because the battle dragon treasure chariot's characteristics could not be used in the ancient gladiator arena. Speed. The war dragon carriage's specialty was its extreme speed. It could not be used in the small arena of the ancient gladiator arena. However, in the 6 demon peaks, in this small world, it was unimpeded. When Chu Fengmian retreated, he called out the war dragon carriage. Chu Fengmian's strength was no longer the same as before. With the support of the gigantic sword radiance, Chu Fengmian had reached the heavenly fate realm. This realm was enough for him to unleash the full power of the war dragon carriage. As the most precious treasure of the 9 demon city, the war dragon carriage was not as weak as it appeared to be. The war dragon treasure carriage's speed was enough to deceive the eyes of the 14 ancestral ancestors present at the scene. In the sky. Looking at the war dragon carriage that Chu Fengmian was sitting on, all the ancestral sovereigns recognized it at first glance. It was the most precious treasure of the 9 demon city, the heavenly demon carriage. Their faces turned ugly. Many experts of the 6 demon sects were actually ancestral sovereigns who had betrayed the 9 demon city. Therefore, they were very familiar with the war dragon carriage. The demon lord of the 9 demon city was almost invincible in the 9 domains. No one dared to go against him. It was not because of the demon lord's strength. The old antiques of the 7 major sects were also able to go against the demon lord. What the demon lord relied on was the war dragon carriage's extreme speed. Such speed was enough to make him invincible in the same realm. Even an ancestral sovereign would not be able to catch the war dragon carriage at full speed. Among the countless spirit artifacts in the 9 regions, the battle dragon carriage could be said to be one of the most troublesome spirit artifacts. The reason he gave it to the little demon lord was so that the little demon lord could use it to save his life. However, the little demon lord back then couldn't even use 1% of the battle dragon treasure carriage's power. In the end, it fell into Chu Fengmian's hands. Looking at Chu Fengmian's war dragon treasure carriage, every ancestor Wu's expression turned solemn. It would be truly troublesome if this spiritual weapon fell into Chu Fengmian's hands. With the battle dragon carriage's speed, even progenitor Wu would not be able to catch it. The heavenly demon treasured carriage. Only the 9 demon cities' demon lord's inheritance can use it. This kid can't possibly have the demon lord's inheritance. He must have used some method to forcibly activate the heavenly demon treasure carriage. He shouldn't be able to use its full power. Demon Venerate 9 Abyss said gloomily as he looked at Chu Fengmian. Brat, do you think that by taking out the heavenly demon treasure chariot, you will be our opponent? I want to see how long you can run. Ghostly, catch him. Swoosh. Suddenly, Demon Venerate Ghostly gathered his spiritual energy and attacked. Thousands of ghost hands were formed in the sky. The target of these thousands of ghost hands was Chu Fengmian's War Dragon treasure carriage. The ghost hands were densely packed together and formed a huge net that shrouded Chu Fengmian. Although the power of these ghost hands did not pose any threat to Chu Fengmian, it was enough to delay Chu Fengmian. Once Chu Fengmian was caught for a short period of time, the remaining 13 progenitors would attack together and Chu Fengmian would definitely die. Although the War Dragon treasure carriage was fast, its defense was not at its peak. At least in front of a dozen progenitors, the War Dragon treasure carriage's defense was like a piece of paper. Chu Fengmian instantly saw through the 9 Abyss Demon Clan's plan. Trying to catch me? Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. The Battle Dragon treasure chariot was not forcibly activated by Chu Fengmian. Instead, it had been completely refined. It could be said that even if the Demon Lord obtained the War Dragon treasure carriage, he would not be able to use it. There was no difference between Chu Fengmian and the Demon Lord. No matter how strong the formation is, there will be a flaw. As long as this formation is broken, you are just a bunch of ants. Chu Fengmian's mind moved and activated the War Dragon treasure carriage to travel through the sky. Thousands of ghost hands formed a blockade in an attempt to catch Chu Fengmian. However, the War Dragon treasure carriage traveled through the countless ghost hands in the sky. None of the ghost hands could touch the War Dragon treasure carriage. The War Dragon treasure carriage's speed was in the top 3 among the 9 regions' spiritual weapons. Under Chu Fengmian's control, the possibility of it being caught was almost zero. Damn it! What a fast speed! Brat, do you only know how to run? If you have the ability, come and fight us head-on. Demon Honorable Geely was gritting his teeth in anger. Chu Fengmian's War Dragon treasure carriage traveled through his ghost hands, but none of his ghost hands could touch Chu Fengmian's War Dragon treasure carriage. When he was about to reach the War Dragon treasure carriage, the War Dragon treasure carriage's speed would suddenly increase, catching him off guard. No matter how many tricks he had up his sleeves, they were all meaningless in front of Chu Fengmian's War Dragon treasure carriage. Damn it! Damn it! Demon Honorable Geely did not hesitate as he unleashed all of his spiritual energy, forming even more ghost hands in the sky. There were tens of thousands of ghost hands, almost filling up the sky. However, Chu Fengmian's War Dragon treasure carriage cleverly dodged through the gaps. No matter how many attacks Demon Honorable Geely threw, none of them could get close to Chu Fengmian. The War Dragon treasure carriage appeared and disappeared unpredictably as it traveled through the sky. Suddenly, the War Dragon treasure carriage changed its direction and accelerated, arriving in front of Demon Honorable 9 Abyss in an instant. Sword break! Chu Fengmian jumped down from the War Dragon treasure carriage and slashed at Demon Honorable 9 Abyss with his sword. His speed was so fast that Demon Honorable 9 Abyss was caught off guard and could not react in time. However, when Chu Fengmian's sword was 3 feet away from Demon Honorable 9 Abyss, a huge force suddenly appeared. It forced Chu Fengmian's sword back. It was the power of the 6-path Divine Sealing Array. Even if Demon Honorable 9 Abyss was not prepared, he still had the combined power of the 13 Supreme Ancestors. Brat, are you courting death? Demon Honorable 9 Abyss finally reacted. He looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent and suddenly threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. Chapter 1024. War Dragon Treasure Carriage. In an instant, the War Dragon treasure carriage rushed over just as Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss's fist was about to hit Chu Fengmian's body. Swoosh! The War Dragon treasure carriage quickly retreated and distanced itself from Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but reveal some nervousness on his face. If the power of the punch had hit Chu Fengmian, he would have been seriously injured even if he did not die. Fortunately, the War Dragon treasure carriage was fast enough to let Chu Fengmian escape. However, looking at Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss, Chu Fengmian frowned. Although Chu Fengmian could rely on the War Dragon treasure chariot to deal with Ancestor Wu, the situation was still extremely disadvantageous for him. Chu Fengmian did not come to 6 demons sect to deal with them. Moreover, Chu Fengmian could feel that Luo Shi was in danger. Chu Fengmian could feel Luo Shi's anxiety. Luo Shi's situation was getting worse by the second. Chu Fengmian had to defeat all these old fellas before Luo Shi was in danger. The Demon Emperor had not shown himself all this while. Apparently, he was dealing with Luo Shi. Luo Shi had the Kanglan Immortal Armor and should be able to deal with the Demon Emperor and the others. However, it was not a long-term solution. Chu Fengmian could not delay any longer. If he did not defeat these old ancestors, Chu Fengmian would not be able to rush into the 6 demon peaks. Chu Fengmian gritted his teeth and looked at Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss and the others. His eyes were not serious as he looked for the weakness of the 6 god-destroying formation. Any formation should have a weakness. Any formation in the world would have a way to break it. There was no such thing as a perfect array formation in the world. There was no doubt about that. However, the more mysterious the formation was, the harder it was to detect its weakness. Especially the 6 god-destroying formation, it was extremely difficult to deal with it. The easiest way to deal with a formation was to deal with one of the formation eyes. As long as one of them was destroyed, the whole formation would collapse. However, the god-slaying formation of the 6 Daos combined the power of the 13 ancestors. No matter who Chu Fengmian was dealing with, he would be dealing with the power of the 13 ancestors at the same time. Once they came into contact, Chu Fengmian would be defeated without a doubt. He was simply invulnerable and had no openings. Invulnerable? An invincible formation? It was impossible for there to be an invincible formation in this world. Flaws. This 6 Daos god-slaying array must have its flaws. Brat, stop struggling. Many of the old ancestors of the 6 Paths Demon Gate have yet to arrive. Once they arrive, you will die. Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed smugly. It was impossible for Chu Fengmian to break through the power of the 6-path god-slaying formation. If the battle dragged on, Chu Fengmian would be the one to lose. Moreover, their mission was not to deal with Chu Fengmian, but to stall for time. After hearing 9 Abyss words, Chu Fengmian's heart was clear. It seemed like there was also a group of people dealing with Luo Shi in the 6 demon peaks. Luo Shi might be able to fend them off with her Kanglan Immortal Armor. However, it was not a long-term solution. She was no match for several supreme old ancestors of the 6 Paths Demon Gate. I don't believe that I can't break through this formation. Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. How could he be stopped by such a small formation? Chu Fengmian's mind flickered, and the War Dragon treasure chariot moved. It was extremely fast, and it dodged the countless attacks of spiritual energy. Suddenly, it charged towards another supreme ancestor. However, the bombardment this time was still meaningless. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he was far from being able to shake the power of the 6-path god-slaying formation. After countless failures, Demon Sovereign Gili did not plan to catch Chu Fengmian and return to the 6-path god-slaying formation. The power of the 14 supreme old ancestors combined into one. No matter who Chu Fengmian was dealing with, he would have to withstand the power of the 14 supreme old ancestors. Ha ha, brat, don't waste your strength. Demon Sovereign Gili looked at Chu Fengmian's continuous attacks and laughed. Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy attacks could not shake the 6-path god-slaying formation at all. However, Chu Fengmian relied on the Battle Dragon treasure carriage to move at an extremely fast speed. He attacked an Supreme Old Ancestor and quickly retreated after attacking. Although Chu Fengmian's strength could not shake the 6-path god-slaying formation, Demon Sovereign 9 Abyss and the others could not attack Chu Fengmian. The situation fell into a stalemate for a while. What a waste of strength. The few supreme ancestors looked at Chu Fengmian and couldn't help but sneer. In their point of view, Chu Fengmian's actions were no different from wasting his strength. However, Chu Fengmian's eyes became clearer and clearer as he was bombarded again and again. Consumption. The spiritual energy consumed by the six-path god-slaying formation was abnormal. Logically speaking, any formation would need to consume spiritual energy. However, the six-path god-slaying formation did not consume any spiritual energy. It was not that there was no consumption, but Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss and the others did not consume any spiritual energy. The power of the six-path god-slaying formation was transmitted from other places. In other words, there was the root of the six-path god-slaying formation. Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss and the others looked like the eye of the formation, but in fact, it was just a disguise. In that case, the eye of the formation must be hidden in another place. Every time Chu Fengmian attacked the six-path god-slaying formation, a special spiritual energy would be transmitted. Although it was hidden, it could not escape Chu Fengmian's eyes. Double swords shatter the sea. Chu Fengmian gathered the power of the two spiritual swords to the extreme. Suddenly, two sword lights bombarded Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss. Fool! Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss snorted. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, it was impossible for him to deal with the combined power of the 14 supreme old ancestors. Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss flicked his sleeve and a spiritual energy came from the sky, shattering the two sword lights. However, after the two sword lights were shattered, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly disappeared from the sky. Where did he go? Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss's face darkened when he saw Chu Fengmian's sudden disappearance. His eyes were filled with shock as if he had thought of something. He quickly turned his head and looked in the direction of the 6 demon peaks. A streak of light was flying toward the 6 demon peaks at an extremely fast speed. Chu Fengmian felt that every time the six-path god-slaying formation was activated, there would be a force transmitted from the 6 demon peaks. Chapter 1025. The moment Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss saw Chu Fengmian rushing towards the 6 demon peaks, he felt uneasy. They were now able to contend with Chu Fengmian and even force him to this point by relying on the power of the 6 god-extinguishing formation. Without the 6 god-extinguishing formation, none of them would be able to contend with Chu Fengmian. 14 old ancestors of the Wu family joining forces and 14 old ancestors of the Wu family joining forces were two completely different concepts. Especially in the ancient gladiator arena, Chu Fengmian was able to kill 8 ancestor noblemen and escape unscathed under the joint attack of more than 20 ancestor noblemen. This caused Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss and the others to panic. Stop him! Kill! Now is the best chance to kill him. Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss looked solemn and murderous intent surged in his eyes. Now that Chu Fengmian wanted to rush into the 6 demon peaks and break the formation core, it was the best chance for them to kill Chu Fengmian. Hearing Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss's command, the other 13 old ancestors gathered their spiritual energy at the same time. The power of 14 old ancestors turned into a huge fist wind and bombarded Chu Fengmian from the sky. The power of the fist tore the space apart and blasted towards Chu Fengmian at an extreme speed. Chu Fengmian shuddered at the moment when the power of the fist wind locked onto him. It was definitely not difficult to resist the power of the fist, but there was only one chance. If he failed this time, Demon Sovereign Nine Abyss would definitely guard the formation core and not give Chu Fengmian any chance. Chu Fengmian finally found an opportunity. If he gave up, he might not have the chance to break the 6 god-extinguishing formation. Fight! Chu Fengmian clenched his teeth. He could not give up this opportunity. As long as he could break the 6 god-extinguishing formation, these old ancestors would be defeated by Chu Fengmian. At that time, Chu Fengmian could rush into the 6 demon peaks and look for Luo Shi. How could Chu Fengmian give up this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Immediately, Chu Fengmian did not consider retreating. Instead, he drove the Battle Dragon treasure carriage and rushed towards the 6 demon peaks. The speed of the War Dragon carriage was pushed to the extreme. In less than a breath's time, Chu Fengmian had rushed into the 6 demon peaks. Chu Fengmian opened up his spiritual sense to search the area. Suddenly, he saw a palace. In this palace, there was a huge formation eye. It was the formation eye of the 6-path God-slaying formation. A formation like the 6-path God-slaying formation was clearly one of the highest-level formations in the 6-path demonic gates. It required an enormous amount of energy to activate. The moment Chu Fengmian approached the eye of the array, he felt a surging spiritual energy fluctuation. Damn it! This brat has found the eye of the formation. The 9 Abyss Demon Sovereign's face turned gloomy when he saw Chu Fengmian rushing towards the palace. However, a sinister smile soon appeared in his eyes. So what if they found it? That punch was already closing in on Chu Fengmian. At the same time, the moment Chu Fengmian approached the edge of the palace, he also felt that the pressure was getting closer and closer. Even when he raised his head, it was enough to see that this punch was less than 100 meters away from Chu Fengmian. Creation. Chu Fengmian's mind moved. The power of his natal sword origin condensed at the tip of the sword. The creation sword radiance soared into the sky. The moment the creation sword gleam was unleashed, it clashed with the fist that broke through the air. This creation sword radiance was less than 30 feet long. Under the fist that was condensed with the power of the sky, it was insignificant. However, the moment this seemingly small sword glow collided with the fist wind, a crack was forcefully torn open in the fist wind. The power of creation, the strongest power in the world, lived up to its name. The sword edge condensed with the power of creation could not be matched by any power. It was a full 90% of its power. Under the creation sword gleam, only 10% of its power struck Chu Fengmian's body. Boom! The power of this punch bombarded Chu Fengmian's body. Long before the power of this punch bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, a layer of dragon scales condensed on Chu Fengmian's body. The power of this punch erupted. Chu Fengmian's body only swayed a little. Then, without hesitation, he rushed toward the palace again. The creation sword radiance had already neutralized 90% of the power of the fist wind. To Chu Fengmian, it could not even cause him a slight injury. He's not dead? Oh no! The smiles on the faces of Demon Venerate 9 Abyss and the others froze again. They had thought that Chu Fengmian would definitely die under this punch. Who would have thought that Chu Fengmian would not be affected at all? Before they could attack again. Suddenly, a 10,000-foot-long creation sword radiance shone from the 6 demon peaks. The palace in front of Chu Fengmian was raised to the ground by the 10,000-foot-long creation sword radiance. The formation core was also shattered by the 10,000-foot-long creation sword radiance. At the same time, the 6-path God-slaying formation in the sky shattered with a crack and disappeared as the 10,000-foot-long creation sword radiance appeared. The 6-path God-slaying formation was broken. The trump card that Demon Venerate 9 Abyss and the others relied on to deal with Chu Fengmian had disappeared at this moment. Oh no! Let's go! Demon Venerate 9 Abyss was the first to react. He shouted and was about to leave. Previously, when Puppet fought Chu Fengmian alone, he could not even withstand a single blow from Chu Fengmian. If it were any of them, they would not be able to resist Chu Fengmian. The other ancestral sovereigns also reacted at the same time. Their eyes were filled with panic and they were about to leave. You still want to leave? Die, all of you! Chu Fengmian's killing intent surged. The shadow of the ancient god of slaughter appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Soaring killing intent burst out. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's body flew rapidly to the sky. With the help of the War Dragon treasure carriage, Chu Fengmian's speed was many times faster than Demon Venerate 9 Abyss and the others. Slaughter the heavens. A blood-red color emerged from Chu Fengmian's creation sword radiance. The blood-red color was the color of the purest killing intent. The sword that represented slaughter the heavens slashed at Demon Venerate 9 Abyss. Demon Venerate 9 Abyss was panicking. Just as he was about to gather his spiritual power to resist, Chu Fengmian's creation sword radiance had already arrived in front of him. Without any suspense, Demon Venerate Nine Abyss's body was crushed under Chu Fengmian's creation sword radiance. Chapter 1026. Not good. Inform the Saint Emperor and summon the Heavenly Demon Lord. Only the Heavenly Demon Lord can suppress him. Demon Honorable Geely shouted. Demon Honorable Nine Abyss was killed by Chu Fengmian as soon as the six-path god vanquishing array was broken. It was impossible for them to fight against Chu Fengmian now. A few old ancestors hurriedly shouted after hearing Demon Honorable Geely's words. They seemed to be calling for someone. However, before their voices could be heard, the sky was already filled with sword light. You still want to call for help? Go to hell! Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. The few ancestral sovereigns were smashed into pieces by the sword light. They did not even have the chance to speak. However, Demon Honorable Geely and the remaining old ancestors took advantage of this opportunity to fly towards the 6 demon peaks. Chu Fengmian would not be able to catch up with them in a short time. Chu Fengmian did not plan to chase after them. Even if Chu Fengmian had the War Dragon treasure carriage, it would not be easy for him to kill all of these old ancestors. The most important thing now was to save Luo Shi. Let's go! Chu Fengmian did not stop as he flew towards the six-path demon sects. The disciples of the six-path demon sects retreated when they saw Chu Fengmian coming over. No one dared to stop Chu Fengmian. Luo Shi's direction. Over there. Chu Fengmian secretly sensed Luo Shi's aura. There was another world in the 6 demon peaks. It was bigger than a country. The sky was filled with demonic intent. At a glance, there were millions of martial artists in the 6 demon peaks. I never thought that the 6-path demon sects had accumulated such a terrifying power. Millions of martial artists, it was not a small number for the 7 sections. However, Chu Fengmian was not interested in the 6-path demon sects. He flew towards Luo Shi's direction. It was in the middle of a mountain range. In the sky, several spiritual energies were colliding. A few old ancestors of the 6-path demon sects were besieging a graceful figure in the sky. Luo Shi. Chu Fengmian's heart finally calmed down when he saw the graceful figure. It seemed that nothing had happened to Luo Shi. However, Luo Shi's current situation was still extremely dangerous. Chu Fengmian glanced over and saw that there were still 8 patriarchs Wu in the sky, surrounding and attacking Luo Shi. As for Luo Shi, she could only dodge under the siege. Luo Shi was protected by the Kanglin immortal armor, which was enough to neutralize most of the power of these ancestor Wu, allowing Luo Shi to deal with these people. Beside him, there was another figure standing in the air. Devil Emperor. This figure was none other than the Demon Emperor. In Chu Fengmian's heart, he was the person he feared the most in the 6-path demon sects. The Demon Emperor was indeed not dead. Those who had died in the ancient gladiator arena were all his clones. Now, the Demon Emperor's aura seemed to be even stronger than when he was in the ancient fighting arena. Clearly, this person had gained new insights from the life and death battle with Chu Fengmian in the ancient gladiator arena. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds, and he had already stepped into the Fate realm. Whether it was Chu Fengmian or the Demon Emperor, with their accumulation, once they stepped into the Fate realm, their strength would improve by leaps and bounds. Luo Shi, don't struggle in vain. Do you think that Chu Fengmian can save you? It's a pity that he can't even protect himself now. I have already set up the 6-path god-destroying formation outside. Once that kid comes, only death awaits him. In the air, the Demon Emperor looked at Luo Shi, who was being besieged, and said coldly, 6-path god-destroying formation? When the Demon Emperor was talking about other things, Luo Shi's expression didn't change much. After all, she knew Chu Fengmian's strength best. Even if the 6-path demon sects wanted to deal with Chu Fengmian, they would have to pay a great price. However, when she heard about the 6-path god-destroying formation, Luo Shi's eyes showed some panic. As a disciple of the 6-path demon sects, she naturally knew how terrifying the 6-path god-destroying formation was. Luo Shi's momentary panic had revealed a flaw in her plan. The 8 patriarchs who were besieging Luo Shi suddenly attacked at this moment. Boundless spiritual energy bombarded Luo Shi. Boom! Luo Shi was also condensing spiritual energy to defend herself. However, the combined strength of the 8 patriarchs far exceeded her strength. On Luo Shi's body, the Kanglin immortal armor was constantly trembling. Luo Shi had already been besieged for a long time. The Kanglin immortal armor on her body was almost losing its power. Under such circumstances, it was almost impossible for Luo Shi to continue struggling. Luo Shi's eyes showed some despair. It seemed like she was really going to die here today. Bang! Under the bombardment of spiritual energy, Luo Shi's body was directly sent flying. The Kanglin immortal armor took most of the impact, but it was still enough to severely injure Luo Shi. Catch her! The Demon Emperor ordered coldly. Yes! The 8 patriarchs hurriedly obeyed and activated their spiritual energy to suppress Luo Shi. The demonic intent in the sky turned into a pitch-black pagoda and fell from the sky. At this moment, a soaring sword light suddenly slashed through the sky. The soaring sword light's target was the pitch-black pagoda. Crack! In the next instant, the pitch-black pagoda was shattered into pieces by the sword light that soared into the sky, shattering on the spot. None of the people present seemed to understand this sudden turn of events. What's going on? Who attacked? Where did the sword light come from? The 8 patriarchs were still looking around, trying to find the direction where the sword light came from. A bunch of old men, how dare you touch my woman? A cold voice suddenly resounded. At the same time, 2 more sword lights appeared and slashed directly at the 8 patriarchs. This voice, hearing this familiar voice, Luo Shi's eyes suddenly shone with an incredulous light. Chu Fengmian. The moment she heard this voice, tears flowed from the corner of Luo Shi's eyes. Chu Fengmian really came. Luo Shi did not dare to believe that Chu Fengmian would really come to the 6 demon gates and risk his life. However, Chu Fengmian still came and barged into the 6 demon gates alone. I'm late. Chapter 1027. For Chu Fengmian, everything around him was his Achilles heel. Whether it was Luo Shi or Han Yueli, they were Chu Fengmian's Achilles heel. The moment Chu Fengmian saw the injuries on Luo Shi's body, the killing intent in his eyes could no longer be concealed. However, when Chu Fengmian's gaze shifted to Luo Shi's injuries, his gaze quickly recovered. Don't worry, I'll take you away soon. Before that, I'll make these people pay the price. After saying this, Chu Fengmian's mind moved. A drop of blood essence flew out from his fingertip and flew towards Luo Shi. It began to integrate into Luo Shi's body, healing her injuries. Chu Fengmian's blood essence was purer and stronger than the blood essence of an ancient war dragon. It was comparable to all elixirs. After doing all this, Chu Fengmian looked at the sky, at the 8 ancestors who had besieged Chu Fengmian just now. Soaring killing intent emerged from Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian's eyes were blood red. His murderous aura was so strong that it made people shudder. Chu Fengmian, why are you here? The moment Demon Emperor saw Chu Fengmian, his eyes were slightly absent-minded. It seemed that he did not expect Chu Fengmian to appear here. Previously, outside of the 6 demon peaks, he had already set up the 6-path godslaying formation to deal with Chu Fengmian. With the power of the 6-path godslaying formation and the cooperation of 15 ancestors, it was a piece of cake to deal with Chu Fengmian. Therefore, even the Demon Emperor did not expect Chu Fengmian's appearance. Why can't I be here? Chu Fengmian looked at the Demon Emperor, then looked at the 8 ancestors and said with killing intent. Are you the ones who injured Luo Shi just now? That's right. One of the Supreme Patriarchs said directly. At the same time, these ancestor Wushu had begun to accumulate their strength secretly. Although it was their first time seeing Chu Fengmian, they were not unfamiliar with the name Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was the one who killed the 8 incarnations of the Demon Emperor in the ancient gladiator arena. Thus, they wanted to capture Luo Shi so that they could use her to take care of Chu Fengmian. Now that the main character was here, Luo Shi was no longer important. Brat, how dare you come to the Six-Path Demon Gate alone? Today, we'll make sure you don't return. Another supreme progenitor said coldly. Kill him. Without any hesitation, these old ancestors took the initiative to attack. They had already gathered their strength to the maximum. He faced Chu Fengmian's palm attack. The other old ancestors also unleashed their killer moves to kill Chu Fengmian. Very well, since you dared to hurt Luo Shi, none of you can leave today. Only your blood essence can make up for your losses. Chu Fengmian unsheathed his two spiritual swords at the same time as he looked at the ancestral patriarchs. At the same time, his anger and killing intent instantly dyed the two spiritual swords blood red. Slaughter the heavens. The Slaughter the Heavens sword technique was unleashed at this moment. Together with Chu Fengmian's killing intent, it was a terrifying power. The two sword edges slashed towards the sky. The power of old ancestor Wu was unable to withstand Chu Fengmian's two sword edges. It was all shattered. What? What kind of power is this? The power of the 8 old ancestors was instantly destroyed by Chu Fengmian's two swords. This kind of power was beyond the imagination of those old ancestors. They never thought that Chu Fengmian's strength had reached such a level. Even the Demon Emperor did not expect it. When Chu Fengmian fought with the Demon Emperor last time, his strength was far from being as terrifying as it was now. Chu Fengmian must die. The Demon Emperor's eyes were filled with murderous intent. From his palm, a pitch-black dagger slowly condensed. Suddenly, the Demon Emperor's figure disappeared. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's swords had already destroyed everything in their path. Then, they soared into the sky. The two swords had locked onto the two ancestor nothingness. Die! Boom! As soon as the swords passed, the bodies of the two old ancestors were penetrated by the swords. Then, there was a burst of explosion and they turned into a cloud of blood mist. This blood mist was swallowed by Chu Fengmian in an instant to replenish Chu Fengmian's strength. When Chu Fengmian refined this blood mist to increase his strength, suddenly, a pitch-black light pierced towards Chu Fengmian. This light was none other than the Demon Emperor, who was holding a pitch-black dagger. The way of assassination. This ray of light was the pinnacle of the ancient assassination Tao. A single slash was enough to determine life and death. Under this slash, death was almost certain. The moment when the blade locked onto him, Chu Fengmian's hair stood on end. He felt the terrifying killing intent. Now you want to sneak up on me? It's too late. Chu Fengmian suddenly shouted coldly. For a while, he flicked his sleeve and suddenly grabbed the pitch-black dagger. This move was simply beyond anyone's expectation. Even the Demon Emperor was the same. When the Demon Emperor was about to get close to Chu Fengmian, he was suddenly swept away by this force on the spot. He was directly forced to retreat dozens of miles. The pitch-black dagger in his hand was also shattered and disappeared. And beside the Demon Emperor stood an old man. This old man's aura was extremely terrifying. It was more terrifying than any old ancestor that Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Heavenly Demon Aura, this person is the Heavenly Demon Master. What a strong power, this power is simply beyond the immortal realm. Beyond the life and death steps. There is actually such a person. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but show some fear in his eyes. The Heavenly Demon Master in front of him was stronger than anyone Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Chu Fengmian felt that this person had even vaguely surpassed the life and death steps and was about to approach a new realm. Most of the warriors in the 9 regions felt that the immortal realm was the highest realm, but Chu Fengmian knew that there was another realm in the immortal realm. The Emperor Realm. The aura of the Heavenly Demon Master in front of him had already surpassed most of the immortal realm old ancestors. This person's strength was already infinitely close to the Emperor Realm. I didn't expect there to be such a person. Chapter 1028. Being defeated by Chu Fengmian in the ancient gladiator arena was the greatest humiliation of his life. Throughout his life, the Demon Emperor looked down on everyone and was invincible. He had never been defeated by anyone in the same realm. However, he was defeated by Chu Fengmian in the 9 Regions Genius competition. This was like an inner demon to the Demon Emperor, constantly bothering him. The Demon Emperor's aura skyrocketed by more than 10 times at this moment. Billowing demonic intent surrounded his body, strengthening it. The Demon Emperor finally displayed his full strength, the full strength of a heavenly mandate realm expert. In an instant, the Demon Emperor's strength was 10 times stronger than when he was in the ancient gladiator arena. Although the battle with Chu Fengmian planted an inner demon in MOD's heart, it also encouraged MOD to take a step forward and step out of the Fate realm. As long as he killed Chu Fengmian, the Demon Emperor's inner demon would be removed. In the 9 regions, he would be invincible and no one would be able to stop him. After stepping into the Heavenly Mandate realm, the Demon Emperor's strength was more than 1 level stronger than before. Now, he wanted to defeat Chu Fengmian personally and once again embark on the path of invincibility. The Demon Emperor is born. The whole world submits. Heavenly Demon God Fist. The Demon Emperor roared loudly. His strength gathered in the wind of his fist as he faced Chu Fengmian's punch. The moment the wind of the fist was thrown, demonic intent filled the sky and turned into the appearance of heavenly demons, roaring in the sky. Under the support of the demons, they bombarded Chu Fengmian. Heavenly Mandate Realm? Even if you've stepped into the Heavenly Mandate Realm, you're still just an ant in front of me. Break for me. Chu Fengmian didn't care at all. From his left and right hands, 2 forces of ice and fire condensed at the same time and integrated into the sword. The power of the divine body of ice and fire was activated and added to the 2 spiritual swords. 2 sword chi soared into the sky and swept across. In front of the 2 swords, the demons were shattered on the spot. Even the Demon Emperor's wind of the fist was torn to pieces. Demon Emperor, I'd like to see how many of your incarnations can save you today. Chu Fengmian's sword tore apart the fist wind. His body moved and he suddenly rushed towards the Demon Emperor. There were only a few people who could cultivate the Nirvana divine body to the last level. Chu Fengmian had already killed 8 of the Demon Emperor's incarnations. The Demon Emperor before him was most likely his original body. As long as Chu Fengmian killed the Demon Emperor before him, there would be no more Demon Emperors in the 9 regions. How could this be? Seeing Chu Fengmian's sword tearing apart his fist wind, the Demon Emperor roared in disbelief. He had stepped into the Sky Mandate realm a step ahead of Chu Fengmian. In his mind, defeating Chu Fengmian should be a piece of cake for him after stepping into the Sky Mandate realm. However, this time around, the gap between him and Chu Fengmian was even greater than when they had fought in the Ancient Era's arena. It was as if Chu Fengmian was the one breaking through to the Destiny realm instead of the Demon Emperor. I don't believe that I can't kill you. I'm the Demon Emperor, the Demon Monarch. I'm a genius. No one in the 9 regions can stop me. The Demon Emperor roared loudly. Demonic will filled the sky again and condensed. The demonic will in the 6 demon peaks was almost endless. The demonic will condensed and the Demon Emperor's original body was revealed. He took on the appearance of the primogenitor heavenly demon. His every move contained a monstrous demonic will that was enough to destroy everything. All-directional sacrifice. Countless purple flames burned from the Demon Emperor's body. He was burning the power of the demon body to accumulate power. A purple spear condensed in the Demon Emperor's hand and pierced towards Chu Fengmian's chest. All-directional demonic spear? Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold when he saw the purple spear condensed in the Demon Emperor's hand. If it's the real all-directional demonic spear, I might be a little afraid. However, this mere phantom wants to deal with me. Break it! While speaking, Chu Fengmian held the spiritual sword in his hand. Another shocking sword light soared into the sky. A sword and a spear collided in the sky. Gradually, the power of the purple spear was broken into pieces in the sky. Puff! The purple spear was broken. The Demon Emperor took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. The purple spear was condensed by the power of the demon body. Now that it was broken, the backlash almost made the demon emperor pass out. What was even more unacceptable was that he was not a match for Chu Fengmian even after he had burned his demon body and used such a method of mutual destruction. The demon emperor was invincible. No one could compete with him. However, Chu Fengmian seemed to be the demon emperor's nemesis. He defeated the demon emperor consecutively. Suppress. Chu Fengmian waved his hand. It turned into a huge claw of the war dragon. It fell from the sky and bombarded the demon emperor's body. The demon emperor's body was struck down to the ground by the war dragon's claw. He was firmly suppressed and could not move. In an instant, the demon emperor was suppressed by Chu Fengmian. The other ancestral sovereigns were shocked for a long time after witnessing this scene. Even Luo Shi was a little stunned. Even though Luo Shi knew that Chu Fengmian's strength was not the same as before, she did not expect Chu Fengmian's strength to be so powerful. The demon emperor who had broken through the destiny realm could not even withstand one move from Chu Fengmian. Save me! Save me! The demon emperor no longer cared about his dignity and shouted loudly. He was suppressed by Chu Fengmian's war dragon's claw. Just as Chu Fengmian had guessed, the demon emperor in front of him was actually his original body. Once his original body fell, the demon emperor would really die. Even if he had the nirvana divine body, he would only die. Let go of the holy emperor. The other supreme ancestors were stunned when they saw the demon emperor defeated so easily. They only reacted when they heard the demon emperor's words. Countless spiritual energy bombarded Chu Fengmian in an attempt to save the demon emperor from Chu Fengmian's hands. A bunch of old men, how dare you come to save me? Go to hell! Murderous intent surged in Chu Fengmian's eyes. It was these people who had hurt Luo Shi. They must die. Boom! The war dragon's claw fell from the sky again. In an instant, another two supreme ancestors were killed by the war dragon's claw. Their bodies were shattered and their essence and blood were all devoured by Chu Fengmian. Go, 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 and inform the heavenly demon lord. The other supreme ancestors were already trembling when they saw this scene. They no longer dared to get close to Chu Fengmian. Instead, they moved and flew in one direction. Chapter 1029. Those who besieged Luo Shi today had to die. Since Chu Fengmian had already started a massacre in the 6 demon sects, he didn't mind killing a few more. Moreover, the blood essence of these ancestors was the best tonic for Chu Fengmian. It was enough for Chu Fengmian to devour and refine it to further enhance his strength. It was to prepare for Chu Fengmian's breakthrough to the heavenly fate realm. As long as Chu Fengmian stepped into the heavenly fate realm, his strength would undergo an earth-shattering change. Chu Fengmian waved his hand in the air and a surge of spiritual power burst out, turning into countless sword chi in the air. Bang! Bang! The countless sword chi chased after the 4 ancestors. No matter how fast they were nothing in front of Chu Fengmian's sword chi. Seeing the approaching sword chi, the 4 ancestral sovereigns exchanged glances with one another. They gathered their spiritual energy and formed a barrier to defend against the sword chi. However, before the barrier could be formed, it was mercilessly shattered by the sword chi. They didn't even have the strength to fight back. The remaining sword chi pierced through the remaining 4 ancestors on the spot and turned them into clouds of blood mist in the air. Chu Fengmian waved his sleeve and the blood essence of these ancestors were all devoured by Chu Fengmian. The 8 ancestors who besieged Luo Shi just now were all killed by Chu Fengmian. There were a total of 8 ancestors. Their blood essence were all devoured by Chu Fengmian and refined in Chu Fengmian's body. In addition to the ancestors who were killed by Chu Fengmian outside, there were more than 10 ancestors who died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Their blood essence was refined by Chu Fengmian and turned into endless spiritual power. Chu Fengmian felt that his strength was about to break through the critical point. Just a little bit more and he could truly break through and step into the heavenly fate realm. Your blood essence will turn into my strength and allow me to take the last step. Chu Fengmian looked at the Demon Emperor and shouted coldly. As long as he killed the Demon Emperor and devoured the Demon Emperor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian's strength would take another step forward and truly step into the heavenly fate realm. Boom! At this moment, the surrounding sky suddenly turned pitch black. Layers of dark clouds cover the sky and cover the sun, shrouding every trace of light. These layers of dark clouds were none other than demonic will, the purest demonic will. The monstrous demonic will seemed to want to devour everything around it. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian sensed an extremely terrifying aura from the demonic will land. The moment he sensed this terrifying aura, Chu Feng's expression changed drastically and became gloomy. Luo Shi, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, began to tremble. Under this power, even Luo Shi, who had become a ruler, trembled. This power, Lord Heavenly Demon. It's Lord Heavenly Demon. Countless disciples of the 6 demon sects and the 6 demon peaks knelt down to show their respect when they felt this aura. Heavenly Demon Supremacy. Heavenly Demon Supremacy has come out of seclusion. Luo Shi's voice couldn't help but tremble a little when she mentioned the Sky Demon. No one in the 6 paths demon sects dared to mention this name. Only the Demon Emperor suddenly burst out laughing the moment he sensed this power. Uncle Tian! Uncle Tian, save me! The Demon Emperor was suppressed by Chu Fengmian's War Dragon Claw. He used up all his strength to shout loudly. The arrival of this aura was like a life-saving straw for the Demon Emperor. He desperately wanted to grab it. Humph! A cold snort sounded. In the sky, in the boundless demonic will land, an old man slowly walked out. The old man's appearance was extremely ordinary, but everyone who saw him couldn't help but feel fear in their hearts. They didn't even dare to make an enemy out of him. This kind of feeling could only be felt by an extremely powerful martial artist. A martial artist who was so powerful that he struck fear in others. Heavenly Demon. This person is the Heavenly Demon Supremacy? What a strong power. This power has surpassed the immortal realm. It has surpassed the life and death steps. How could there be such a person? Chu Fengmian looked at Kong with a hint of fear in his eyes. The Heavenly Demon Supremacy in front of him was stronger than anyone Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Chu Fengmian felt that this person had even surpassed the life and death steps and was approaching a whole new realm. Most of the martial artists in the 9 territories felt that the immortal realm was the highest realm, but Chu Fengmian knew that there was another realm above the immortal realm. The Emperor Realm. The aura of this Heavenly Demon Supremacy had already surpassed most of the immortal realm's old ancestors. This person's strength was infinitely close to the Emperor Realm. I didn't expect there to be such a master. Chu Fengmian felt that this was extremely tricky. The strength of the 6 paths demon sects was beyond his imagination. The Emperor Realm was an extremely rare figure even in the prosperous era of martial Dao. He didn't expect there to be such a person hidden in the 6 paths demon sects. However, Chu Fengmian could vaguely see that the Heavenly Demon Supremacy hadn't really reached the Emperor Realm. He was just close to it. A Heavenly Demon Supremacy who is close to the Emperor Realm. This is going to be troublesome. Chu Fengmian's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of gloominess. The appearance of such a master was indeed beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. Chu Fengmian originally thought that the supremacies of the 6 paths demon sects were all young people like Luo Shi and the others. Now, it seemed that this Heavenly Demon Supremacy wasn't like that. He was more like an old antique, a true master of the 6 paths demon sects. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, it was easy for him to deal with the old ancestors. However, the moment he met this Heavenly Demon Supremacy, Chu Fengmian felt that the pressure from this Heavenly Demon Supremacy was much greater than the 6 paths God Extinguishing Array. The strength of this Heavenly Demon Supremacy was even greater than the 6 paths God Extinguishing Array formed by the 15 old ancestors. The Heavenly Demon Supremacy ignored Chu Fengmian and looked at the Demon Emperor coldly. His tone was filled with reprimand. You're so useless. Demon Emperor, as the Demon Emperor of the 6 paths demon sects, how could you let the 6 paths demon sects be destroyed like this? What a waste of your talent. Yes, Uncle Tian. This junior is incompetent and has insulted the reputation of the Six Paths Demon Sects. The Demon Emperor put away all his arrogance in front of this heavenly demon supremacy and said respectfully. Chapter 1030. The Demon Emperor shouted at the top of his lungs when he saw the heavenly demon supremacy. As long as he could capture Chu Fengmian alive, the Demon Emperor would be able to obtain the inheritance of Chu Fengmian's body. In that case, he would be able to make up for the loss of 8 of his incarnations. Now that Chu Fengmian had such strength in the heart-refining realm, the Demon Emperor knew clearly how terrifying Chu Fengmian's body was. If the Demon Emperor could devour Chu Fengmian's body, he would be able to take another step forward. This person has a shocking encounter. Uncle Heavenly Demon, please don't kill him. Capture him alive. The Demon Emperor said hurriedly to the Heavenly Demon Supremacy. He was afraid that the Heavenly Demon Supremacy would kill Chu Fengmian in a fit of anger. Shocking encounter? The Heavenly Demon Supremacy looked at Chu Fengmian after hearing the Demon Emperor's words. When he saw that Chu Fengmian's body was only in the heart-refining realm, the Heavenly Demon Supremacy was slightly shocked. He thought it would be at least an immortal realm old ancestor or an old antique who came to cause trouble in the 6 demon gates. He didn't expect that it would be a young man like Chu Fengmian who was only in the heart-refining realm. A heart-refining realm martial artist was enough to kill Ancestor Wu and even defeat the Demon Emperor, forcing the Demon Emperor into a desperate situation. The Heavenly Demon Supremacy knew what this meant. Battle Dragon Bloodline? Innate Godly Body? Sword Dao in the Sword God Realm? Celestial Demon Supremacy glanced at Chu Fengmian and saw through almost all of Chu Fengmian's trump cards. Who would have thought that such a character would appear in the 9 regions? An anomaly, an anomaly. Very well, since you've lost 8 incarnations, I'll capture him and let you recover your strength. Suddenly, the Heavenly Demon Supremacy changed the topic and looked at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian could feel the immense pressure from the Heavenly Demon Supremacy. It was a pressure that wanted to crush him. The 6 demon gates is not a place where you can be bullied. Luo Shi, as the supremacy of the 6 demon gates, betraying the sect is a crime punishable by death. And you, Chu Fengmian. You killed countless disciples of the 6 Daos Devil Gate. You deserve the death penalty as well. I'll capture the 2 of you and hand you over to the Devil Emperor," said the Celestial Demon Lord slowly. His words were like a supreme order, a judgment. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi were prisoners waiting to be judged. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. The moment the Heavenly Demon Supremacy appeared, Chu Fengmian was already thinking of how to escape unscathed. In terms of strength, Chu Fengmian's side was at an absolute disadvantage. Even if there were 10 Chu Fengmians, they still wouldn't be a match for this celestial devil supremacy. However, Chu Fengmian still held the initiative because the Devil Emperor was still in his hands. Capture! Chu Fengmian made a sudden move and grabbed the Demon Emperor with his Battle Dragon Claw. Right now, the only way to escape was to capture the Demon Emperor. With the Demon Emperor's status, it was enough to make the Heavenly Demon Supremacy wary. Humph, you want to capture someone in front of this old man? The Heavenly Demon Supremacy snorted coldly and suddenly made a move. His speed was astonishing. Even Chu Fengmian could only see a shadow of the Heavenly Demon Supremacy at a glance. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's Battle Dragon Claw was smashed by a surge of spirit energy. The Demon Emperor was rescued by the Heavenly Demon Supremacy. Chu Fengmian's speed was not worth mentioning in front of the Heavenly Demon Supremacy. Damn it, boy, how did you provoke such a terrifying enemy? This old man is no longer old Ancestor Wu. He has already surpassed the life and death steps and stepped into the Emperor realm. Although he hasn't fully stepped into the Emperor realm, he is already half a step into the Emperor realm. You can't be his opponent. Xing Xian suddenly woke up in his mind because of the Heavenly Demon Supremacy's aura. He also felt the danger of Chu Fengmian. It was different from before. Although Chu Fengmian had experienced countless dangers and escaped from the hands of the Grim Reaper again and again, this time was the most dangerous. Half a step into the Emperor realm. This was a realm completely different from the life and death steps and the immortal realm. Half-step Emperor realm. Quasi-Emperor. Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian's face became even more embarrassed. Although he had already guessed the heavenly demon supremacy's realm, he didn't expect it to be the same as Chu Fengmian's guess. This heavenly demon supremacy was no longer old ancestor Wu who was in the immortal realm. He had stepped into a new realm, the Emperor realm. He was only one step away from the Emperor realm. Such a realm was called a quasi-emperor. However, even a quasi-emperor was a completely different realm from the immortal realm. It was difficult for 1 out of 100 old ancestors to step into the quasi-emperor realm. Such a character would be a famous master even if it was 10,000 years ago or in the ancient era. A quasi-emperor was much more difficult to deal with than a dozen old ancestors. Oh boy, it seems that you know a lot. You can even see this old man's realm? Hearing the words quasi-emperor, a hint of surprise flashed in the heavenly demon supremacy's eyes. In the current era, there weren't many people in the younger generation who knew this title. It seems that you really have a shocking encounter. You can even use the full power of the gigantic Gate Divine Sword. Those guys in the Tianjian sect couldn't figure it out even after 10,000 years, but you can use it. It seems that you are related to the Sword Dao sect 10,000 years ago. The heavenly demon supremacy was much more experienced than any of the old ancestors. He could almost guess all of Chu Fengmian's secrets. Old man, you know a lot. Chu Fengmian looked at the heavenly demon supremacy without any panic on his face. At this point, there was no point in panicking. It would be better to think of a way to leave the 6 demon sects. However, the heavenly demon supremacy's speed was too fast. Chu Fengmian's plan to capture the demon emperor and use him as a hostage was no longer feasible. There was only one way left. Let's fight. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. So what if he was a quasi-emperor? The ancient war dragon was not afraid of anything. He was not afraid of even a quasi-emperor. You want to fight with me? Chapter 1031. The heavenly demon supremacy had already stepped out of the quasi-emperor realm and reached a completely different realm. Only he knew how powerful a quasi-emperor was. Although quasi-emperors were only one step away from the 9th step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm, the difference in strength was enormous. The gap was like a chasm that could not be crossed. Chu Fengmian naturally knew how powerful a quasi-emperor was. However, he had no other choice but to fight. The heavenly demon supremacy was determined to kill Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Fengmian wanted to escape, it was almost impossible for him to escape from a quasi-emperor. Only death would await him if he tried to escape. It was better to fight with the heavenly demon supremacy to find an opportunity. As long as he could find an opportunity to fight the heavenly demon supremacy, Chu Fengmian could take Luo Shi and leave the 6 demon peaks. As long as they left the 6 demon peaks, Chu Fengmian could use the Cloud Feather Palace to teleport away. Attack! Chu Fengmian did not hesitate and suddenly attacked. The power of his ice-fire divine body was pushed to the extreme. The power of ice and fire was integrated into the sword. At the same time, the sword will of the sword god realm burst out at the same time, adding to the blade. Behind Chu Fengmian, there was the shadow of an ancient god of slaughter. Chu Fengmian could not hold back when fighting against the heavenly demon supremacy. If a quasi-emperor attacked with his full strength, Chu Fengmian could be killed instantly. Facing a quasi-emperor, Chu Fengmian erupted with his full strength. The heavenly demon supremacy was too dangerous. Chu Fengmian did not even prepare to test his strength. He could only erupt with his full strength. 2 rays of sword light soared into the sky and slashed towards the heavenly demon supremacy. Luo Shi, who was beside Chu Fengmian, was also aware of how dangerous the celestial demon supremacy was. She moved her hands and shot out countless demonic intent, which turned into iron chains that flew towards the celestial demon supremacy. A mere ant dares to make an enemy out of me? The heavenly demon supremacy looked at Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's attack and said disdainfully. It was as if he was looking at a few ants struggling. The celestial demon supremacy raised his hand slowly as the two sword lights approached him. With a tap of his finger, Chu Fengmian's two streaks of sword qi and Luo Shi's chains were shattered. With a single finger, Zhang Xian neutralized all of the attacks. Once old ancestor Wu was locked onto by Chu Fengmian's sword, he would definitely die. The power was self-evident. Now, Chu Fengmian didn't hold back at all. The sword intent of the sword god realm and the power of the ice-fire divine body had been activated. However, the heavenly demon supremacy easily broke it with a single finger. It was as if Chu Fengmian's sword was a child's play to him. Quasi-Emperor, the strength of a quasi-emperor is actually this strong? You can break my sword with a single finger? Chu Fengmian was shocked when he saw heavenly demon supremacy break the sword with a single finger. There had never been anyone who could break his sword so easily. Even old ancestor Wu couldn't withstand Chu Fengmian's sword. But now, this heavenly demon supremacy was so relaxed. He didn't even make a move after blocking Chu Fengmian's attack. Obviously, he didn't put Chu Fengmian in his eyes. Damn it. Chu Fengmian was reborn and this was the first time he was looked down upon like this. This heavenly demon supremacy didn't intend to make a move. He seemed to be calculating Chu Fengmian's identity and wanted to know what had happened to Chu Fengmian. Although Chu Fengmian was clear about it, he couldn't just sit and wait for death. I said, with your strength, you are definitely not a match for a quasi-emperor. Even a quasi-emperor is half a step into the emperor realm. How can you be a match for him? Xing Xian said anxiously in his mind. If you go alone, you still have a chance to escape. This old man should have just stepped into the quasi-emperor realm. He is considered the weakest among the quasi-emperors. If you rush out alone, you still have a chance to escape. Go alone? Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian shook his head. How could Chu Fengmian abandon Luo Shi and escape? With the demon emperor's character, if Luo Shi really fell into his hands, she would be tortured inhumanely. Why? Are you still considering whether to escape alone? Unfortunately, neither of you can escape today. The heavenly demon supremacy looked at Chu Fengmian's silence and laughed. Forget it, this old man doesn't want to play with you two anymore. I will capture the two of you and hand you over to the demon emperor. After the heavenly demon supremacy finished his sentence, his eyes became completely different from before. Dense demonic intent started to gather around him. The demonic will cover the sky and the sun, blocking out all the light, turning the place into a land of darkness. In the darkness, the demonic will gradually condense into 10 figures. 10 heavenly demons. The demon intent around the heavenly demon supremacy turned into 10 heavenly demons. However, the 10 heavenly demons condensed by the heavenly demon supremacy were many times stronger than the ones condensed by the demon emperor. Go, capture them. The heavenly demon supremacy looked at the 10 heavenly demons and pointed at Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. The 10 heavenly demons roared loudly, their demonic voices resounding through the heavens and earth. Then, they closed in on Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. Creation. When the 10 heavenly demons condensed, Chu Fengmian secretly used the power of his natal sword origin. The power of creation was added to Chu Fengmian's swords. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, it was almost impossible for him to kill the 10 heavenly demons. The only thing Chu Fengmian could rely on now was the power of creation, his true trump card. The power of creation was condensed on the two swords. Chu Fengmian's body suddenly moved and rushed up into the sky. Sword dance across the sky. Countless sword shadows burst out in the sky. There were at least tens of thousands of sword shadows, slashing towards the 10 heavenly demons. Among the sword shadows, there were 2 purple sword radiances mixed in, slashing towards the 10 heavenly demons. Hiss! The 10 heavenly demons that were pierced by the 2 purple sword radiances suddenly stopped in the air. Then, a crack appeared where the sword radiances pierced, tearing the two heavenly demons apart. This power? This is the creation. The power of creation. Boy, you can actually control the power of creation? Chapter 1032. The creation energy was the most powerful energy in the world. It was rumored that the power of creation could indeed be controlled, but no one in the 9 regions had ever taken it seriously. After all, the creation energy represented the power of the heavens and earth. It was the ultimate power of the heavens and earth. How could a human control it? However, the heavenly demon supremacy could clearly sense the existence of the creation energy from Chu Fengmian's sword light. You're indeed an anomaly. The creation energy can be controlled by a human. It seems like you're an anomaly. The heavenly demon supremacy looked at Chu Fengmian with greed in his eyes. You are indeed powerful. You are able to kill old Master Wu with your heart refinement realm cultivation. Furthermore, you possess the bloodline of the battle dragon. Now, you even possess the power of creation. If you are allowed to grow in the future, you will definitely become a huge trouble. The creation energy should not be controlled by a human. However, since it's in your hands, it means that the rules have changed. As long as I capture you, everything you have will belong to me. The same goes for your creation energy. If I can control the creation energy, my strength will definitely improve. The heavenly demon supremacy took action personally. His figure flickered in the sky. The moment he saw Chu Fengmian using the creation energy, the heavenly demon supremacy decided to suppress Chu Fengmian personally. Controlling the creation energy had always been an illusory rumor. However, Chu Fengmian had actually done it. As long as he suppressed Chu Fengmian, everything Chu Fengmian had would belong to him. The celestial demon supremacy couldn't help but be tempted. He couldn't help but make a move. The heavenly demon supremacy's speed was extremely fast. He was even faster than the battle dragon treasure carriage. All Chu Fengmian could see was a black ray of light rapidly approaching Chu Fengmian. The moment the black light got close to Chu Fengmian, the heavenly demon supremacy threw a palm strike towards him. 10 direction sky demon palm. The remaining 8 celestial devils all merged into the celestial devil master's palm and fell toward Chu Fengmian with a loud rumble. The heavenly demon supremacy had merged the power of the remaining 8 10 direction sky demons into his palm. For the first time, Chu Fengmian felt an extreme sense of oppression. The power of this palm seemed to want to completely suppress Chu Fengmian's power and body. Chu Fengmian was able to kill 2 celestial devils because of the power of creation. It would not be difficult for him to deal with 1 celestial devil on his own. But now, the power of the 8 heavenly demons had merged into one and was pressing down on Chu Fengmian, suppressing his body. Chu Fengmian felt like he couldn't move at all. Every cell in his body was being suppressed by a force. He couldn't even gather his spirit power to activate his natal sword essence. At the same time, a huge black pagoda had already formed above Chu Fengmian's head and was slowly descending. Chu Fengmian knew very well that once the pitch-black pagoda descended, Chu Fengmian would truly be suppressed. He would not be able to resist at all. Although Chu Fengmian knew that the heavenly demon supremacy would definitely choose to suppress Chu Fengmian, he did not expect the heavenly demon supremacy to be so ruthless. The heavenly demon supremacy did not give Chu Fengmian the slightest chance to escape. All of Chu Fengmian's preparations seemed to be useless. 9. Little Nine's voice suddenly sounded in Chu Fengmian's mind. Chu Fengmian was being suppressed. Even the God Tree was being completely suppressed. Even Little Nine could sense the danger, and seemed to be calling out to Chu Fengmian, and was on the verge of bursting out. No, now's not the time. Chu Fengmian hurriedly said to Little Nine. Little Nine's strength could only be used once. If he used it now, he could temporarily escape. But facing the heavenly demon supremacy, Chu Fengmian would still die. Moreover, it was not a bad thing to fight against a quasi-emperor while under great pressure. Chu Fengmian felt that the bottleneck in his body that had been fixed for a long time was starting to loosen. Under this pressure, Chu Fengmian's bottleneck began to loosen. Invincible Battle Dragon. Chu Fengmian wholeheartedly focused on the Battle Dragon will. He pushed the power of the Battle Dragon will to the extreme. The Battle Dragon bloodline was boiling in Chu Fengmian's body. At the same time, the blood essence of the Six Paths Demon Sect's old ancestors that Chu Fengmian had just killed were all poured into the Battle Dragon bloodline. It was burning and refining, turning into pure spiritual energy. Tempering. Under the great pressure of the heavenly demon supremacy, Chu Fengmian was tempering his strength. Chu Fengmian was clear that only by breaking through to the heavenly fate realm would he have a chance to fight against the heavenly demon supremacy. Only then would he have a chance to survive. In Chu Fengmian's body, there were more than 10 old ancestors' blood essence. Chu Fengmian had not given the divine tree the blood essence to refine. He had been waiting for this moment. Dragon diagram, emerge. The shadow of the ancient battle dragon was condensed behind Chu Fengmian's back. The 99,000 drops of blood essence were shining brightly, erupting with extreme power. Roar! A dragon roar resounded from Chu Fengmian's mouth. Golden dragon scales appeared on his body. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian opened his eyes. In his eyes, there was a glimmer of light. There was no sign of fear, only fighting spirit. Break! The golden dragon scales around Chu Fengmian shattered. However, the shattering of the dragon scales did not mean that Chu Fengmian's strength was collapsing. Instead, it was a feeling of being reborn after breaking through the bottleneck. Bang! 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 Countless spiritual energy burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. Then, a new set of dragon scales condensed on Chu Fengmian's body. The dragon scales were still golden, but there was a simple and unadorned color on the surface. The change seemed to be the transformation of a young dragon into a real ancient battle dragon. A dazzling light shone from the top of Chu Fengmian's head. Heavenly fate! The moment the ray of light shone, the battle dragon shadow formed by the 99,000 drops of ancient battle dragon essence blood behind Chu Fengmian also let out roars. Drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence were condensed. 100,000 drops. Chapter 1033. The Heavenly Fate Realm. Chu Fengmian's guess was right. 100,000 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence was the threshold. Although there was only a difference of 1,000 drops between 99,000 drops and 100,000 drops, it represented the bottleneck between the refined heart realm and the heavenly fate realm. However, the moment the 100,000 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence were condensed, Chu Fengmian's power gradually began to stagnate. After stepping into the heavenly fate realm, Chu Fengmian's cultivation level also began to slow down. It was no longer like before, where he could increase his cultivation level by several levels in one go. If Chu Fengmian wanted to take another step forward, he would need more accumulation. Taking another step forward would still be difficult. Chu Fengmian's current level was truly at the Heaven's Mandate level. It wasn't due to the support of the Juk Sword Radiance. Although Chu Fengmian could also increase his cultivation level to the Heavenly Fate realm with the help of the Juk Sword Gleam, it was completely different from when he truly stepped into the Heavenly Fate realm. Once one stepped into the Heavenly Fate realm, one would be able to truly control one's destiny. It was a completely different realm from the refined heart realm. Therefore, Heavenly Fate realm cultivators were also known as sovereigns. Now that Chu Fengmian had stepped into the Heavenly Fate realm, he was even more aware of the power of the Heavenly Fate realm. His current strength was more than 10 times stronger than before. If the power of the Juk Sword Gleam was added, it would be enough to increase Chu Fengmian's cultivation level by another level, reaching the Celestial realm. In this way, he would only be 2 steps away from the Quasi-Emperor realm. Although the gap was still huge, it had shrunk a lot. There might be a chance for him to survive this battle. Chu Fengmian could feel that the 10-directional Sky Demon Palm's suppression on him had weakened a lot after he had broken through to the Heavenly Fate realm. Although the pressure it brought to Chu Fengmian was still enormous, he was no longer as desperate as before. You want to suppress me? No one in the all heavens can suppress me. Chu Fengmian roared furiously and crazily. The power in his body also began to condense and reach the limit. The spiritual energy that had been restraining Chu Fengmian was forcibly torn open, allowing Chu Fengmian to finally move. Boom! Chu Fengmian's cultivation level soared once more, reaching the 8th step of the life and death steps in the blink of an eye, reaching the celestial realm. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed coldly as he sensed the surging energy condensed to the extreme. He infused all his power into the 2 spiritual swords. At the same time, he also infused the power of creation into them. At this moment, a dazzling sword light burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. It completely tore apart the power of the 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm. He actually broke through at this time. The Heavenly Demon Supremacy was slightly surprised to see Chu Fengmian's breakthrough. The murderous intent in his eyes intensified. Under such a dangerous situation, Chu Fengmian was still able to break through and even wanted to reverse the situation. This kind of person was the most difficult to deal with. But so what if he's at the Heaven's Mandate realm? To a quasi-emperor, even if Chu Fengmian had made a breakthrough, he was still as insignificant as an ant. Even if you've broken through, don't even think about escaping. In front of this emperor, you will forever be an ant. The Heavenly Demon Supremacy looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted angrily. Billowing demonic intent emerged from the Heavenly Demon Supremacy's body and condensed into the complete 10 Directions Heavenly Demons in the air. The 10 Directions Heavenly Demons originated from the same source. The 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm could only be used when all the 10 Directions Heavenly Demons were integrated into it. This time, Chu Fengmian had killed 2 of the 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm. This time, the complete 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm pressed down on Chu Fengmian. Boom! Chu Fengmian felt that he was about to be suppressed again when the palm came pressing down on him. Damn it, this old man's strength is too strong. I didn't expect that he didn't use his full strength just now. He still has some leeway. The power of this palm was 10 times stronger than the previous one. It wasn't only because the 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm was complete this time, but also because the Heavenly Demon Supremacy had taken the initiative to use his full strength. When he was fighting with Chu Fengmian, the Heavenly Demon Supremacy didn't even bother to use his full strength. This was the real strength of the Heavenly Demon Supremacy. Sword shattering heaven and earth. Chu Fengmian gathered spiritual energy on his sword and slashed out again. However, the power of this slash was unable to shake the 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm. Instead, it was gradually devoured by the power of the 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm. It's useless, kid. You should be honored to be able to make me use my full strength. The Heavenly Demon Supremacy looked at Chu Fengmian's struggle and said coldly. Facing a Heavenly Fate Realm kid, the Heavenly Demon Supremacy actually used his full strength. This was already beyond his expectation. Damn it, am I really going to be suppressed by this person? I, Chu Fengmian, have experienced countless life and death situations. Am I really going to be defeated today? Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with a trace of struggle. His mind was quietly calling for Little Nine. However, Chu Fengmian knew that even if Little Nine took action now, it would only delay the time of his death. He still couldn't escape from the Heavenly Demon Supremacy. Kid, I know you still have some trump cards. Use all of them. Otherwise, it will be too late when you are suppressed. The Heavenly Demon Supremacy looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a mocking expression. He knew that Chu Fengmian still had some trump cards. But so what? Even if Chu Fengmian used all of his trump cards, he still wouldn't be able to overturn the situation. At this critical moment, the sky was suddenly distorted, and then it was torn apart, and suddenly shattered. At the same time, a blue sword radiance flashed out and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. The target wasn't Chu Fengmian, but the 10 Directions Heavenly Demon Palm in front of him. The moment the blue sword glow flashed, the 10 Directions Sky Demon Palm was formed into countless pieces of ice. The demonic will was completely frozen by the ice and stopped in the air. Ice Lotus Sword Technique? The moment Chu Fengmian saw the blue sword radiance, his eyes shone with a strange light. Yuli? The moment the blue sword radiance was shot out, a white figure walked out from the void. It had been a long time since they last met. Han Yueli's aura was completely different from before. Her every move was noble and respectable. Chapter 1034. Before Chu Fengmian left the Cloud Feather Palace, he had asked Elder Yun about Han Yueli's condition. According to Elder Yun, Han Yueli was about to awaken and complete the inheritance. However, Chu Fengmian didn't expect Han Yueli to rush over to the Six Paths Demon Gate without any regard for the danger. Since Han Yueli had rushed over, it meant that the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace had been completed. The Cloud Feather Palace was a colossus that was even more powerful than the Six Paths Demon Gate. The inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace was comparable to the inheritance of a demon emperor. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian took a closer look at Han Yueli and sensed her aura. The ninth step of the life and death steps, the immortality realm. After completing the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace, Han Yueli had entered the ninth step of the life and death steps, the immortality realm. She was only one step away from becoming a quasi-emperor on the same level as the heavenly demon supremacy. While Chu Fengmian was still in shock, Han Yueli had already arrived beside Chu Fengmian. She could tell that Chu Fengmian was in a precarious situation. This was especially so when she saw Chu Fengmian's injuries. Suddenly, Han Yueli's eyes turned red. Murderous intent surged from Han Yueli's body. How dare you hurt him? Han Yueli looked at the heavenly demon supremacy with a murderous gaze. Even Luoshi was stunned when she saw Han Yueli's change. Han Yueli looked at Chu Fengmian with a gentle gaze. However, her murderous intent was even more terrifying than the disciples of the Six Paths Demon Gate. You've always been the one protecting me. This time, it's my turn to protect you. Han Yueli looked at Chu Fengmian and said gently. In the past, Chu Fengmian had always protected Han Yueli. This time, it was Han Yueli's turn. Oh? You're just a little guy in the immortal realm, and you want to save someone from me? The heavenly demon supremacy was surprised to see Han Yueli, but when he saw Han Yueli's cultivation, his face remained calm, and he didn't seem to care at all. To him, one more immortal realm warrior wasn't a big deal. Although the immortal realm was only one step away from the quasi-emperor realm, the gap was so huge that it was impossible to cross. Profound Frost Body. I didn't expect another genius to appear in the 9 regions this time. However, it's good that we can capture you and make you the demon queen of the Six Paths Demon Gate. The heavenly demon supremacy looked at Han Yueli and laughed. You 3 brats, you're going to stay in the Six Paths Demonic Gate today. As he spoke, the celestial demon supremacy attacked again. Billowing demonic intent filled the air. Countless demonic figures appeared in the sky, and blood-red demonic claws extended from the dark clouds. Let's join hands and fight our way out. Chu Fengmian said to Han Yueli and Luoshi when he saw the heavenly demon supremacy attacking. Han Yueli's appearance gave Chu Fengmian a boost of confidence. With the addition of Han Yueli, their chances of escaping unscathed were even higher. There was even a possibility that the heavenly demon supremacy would pay the price. Chu Fengmian had never been forced into a desperate situation like this. If he didn't make the heavenly demon supremacy pay the price, he wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Alright, let's rush out. I've already broken the seal of this small world. As long as we leave the 6 demon peaks, we can escape into the void. At that time, this old man won't be able to catch up to us. Han Yueli said. Let's attack him first and find an opportunity to rush out. Alright. Chu Fengmian nodded. He had secretly accumulated a large amount of spiritual energy and integrated it into his swords. Heaven-breaking dual swords. The 2 swords, which had accumulated spiritual energy to the limit, slashed towards the sky. The 2 swords instantly cut down countless bloody hands that were falling down from the sky. As for Han Yueli and Luo Shi, they also used their own methods to continuously shatter the bloody hands that filled the sky. Attack him! Even Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli couldn't withstand the power of the bloody hands. The heavenly demon supremacy was a quasi-emperor who had already comprehended the emperor realm. He had the emperor's aura, and every move he made was extremely suppressive to any cultivator who hadn't comprehended the emperor realm. You still want to resist? I'd like to see how long you can resist. Countless bloody hands were shattered, but the heavenly demon supremacy didn't care. With a flick of his sleeve, 10 times the number of bloody hands fell from the sky. The heavenly demon supremacy's spiritual energy was so strong that it was almost endless. The heavenly demon supremacy also locked onto Chu Fengmian the moment the blood hands landed on him. For the heavenly demon supremacy, Luo Shi wasn't much of a threat, but Han Yueli was obviously easier to deal with than Chu Fengmian. He directly blasted towards Chu Fengmian with his palm. The spiritual energy in this palm was no longer as fierce as before. This emperor has changed his mind. I'll kill you first. Anyway, this emperor can still get your treasures after killing you. The heavenly demon supremacy took the initiative to kill Chu Fengmian. He didn't want to suppress Chu Fengmian like before. The ferocious and overbearing spiritual energy contained in his palm wanted to kill Chu Fengmian directly. Suppressing a person was 10 times more difficult than killing one. Now that Han Yueli had appeared, the heavenly demon supremacy felt a little uneasy, so much so that he directly wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. Although he couldn't get many benefits from killing Chu Fengmian, it was enough to take away most of Chu Fengmian's treasures. With the demon emperor's greed in mind, the heavenly demon supremacy became more cautious. At the crucial moment, he directly used his killing move. Die, boy! The heavenly demon supremacy's figure rushed in front of Chu Fengmian in an instant and blasted his palm towards Chu Fengmian's chest. The heavenly demon supremacy didn't want to give Chu Fengmian any chance to kill at such a close distance. He wanted to crush Chu Fengmian on the spot. Even if Chu Fengmian encountered many difficulties, he could only die. However, the moment the heavenly demon supremacy approached Chu Fengmian, the corners of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a smile. Good timing. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian communicated with his mind and a figure suddenly appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. This figure was little Nine. It was only the size of Chu Fengmian's chest and looked inconspicuous. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.